Hi, I'm Opie YouTube Videos. I am a feminist and a lesbian, and I make conversational commentary videos about both of those things. One of my first series that I did on this channel that took me multiple parts to get through, unlike this one, was a video about Alexa Nikolas, a former, possibly, YouTuber and former child actor who was the figurehead for this activist group that had originally intended to be pretty much anything other than it turned out being. In those, I took you from me feeling a bit unsettled about something to me being very confident in where I stood and what I thought. So much was still unfolding with Alexa Nikolas as I was actively working on those videos that I knew it was going to take me a while to talk about. And somewhere about halfway into section 1, I realized that if I am talking about Alexa on my YouTube channel to the extent that I did, that I absolutely at some point needed to also talk about Swoop, the YouTuber that is the subject of today's video. Because Swoop actually does have a larger platform than Alexa Nikolas. She has more followers, and she's also somebody who I have a lot of the same concerns about that I did with what Eat Predators ultimately ended up turning into. Concerns about trying to intentionally court a fandom of traumatized people, kind of shutting down criticism of yourself within those group of people because you're convincing them to think of themselves as your friend and your defender. For-profit feminism, which, is something that always will exist under capitalism, but that I, Opie YouTube videos, will always have some feelings about. And what I and a few others who I have spoken to and also come across online see as kind of a misuse of some therapy terminology, perhaps, which we will be getting into at some point in today's video. I say this not as apology for my videos, or because I'm mad if it means that my videos are not for other people. My videos are kind of long. I do also intentionally front load the nuance because I am not interested in being in conversation with people who come to my channel specifically just to watch me take down a woman, which is why I always take my time to kind of set up where and why I'm criticizing somebody from. The journey is the destination, really, here. I think the majority of the people that I have been having some really excellent conversations with over the last few months in my comment section understand this about what I'm going for. We are on rails. I have planned out this video, but I'm talking about a lot of things. It will be long. That's just part of it. Another piece of top of video nuance here, though, in addition to this video being intentionally long, nuanced, and balanced, intentionally not a takedown video about Swoop. It's also not a video that I am recording because I think that Swoop is a bad person. It's not a video that I'm recording because I think that people who enjoy Swoop's content are wrong to enjoy that content, or that her content is never good, enjoyable, does not ever have value. Instead, my goal is, and always has been with this video and videos like it, such as my Alexa Nikolas series, to examine what's done with a platform that kind of gets a little bit excused because of its intentions, no matter what that follow-through looks like. So even though as a result of me watching videos that I already knew that I didn't enjoy to make this video, I may get a bit flustered or frustrated at times. I have no ill feelings towards Swoop specifically. Honestly, as I said earlier, she has a larger platform than Alexa Nikolas, and though I will be talking about some ways that that platform has kind of maybe been weaponized against some people in the past, I'm not gonna say that I think that she's doing an equivalent amount of harm as Alexa Nikolas was with the Guess Who live streams. What I am gonna say is that there needs to be room to criticize harm that is done by well-intentioned people with platforms that gain respect and notoriety based on those good intentions when they fall short. Because otherwise, if the feminists are not able to critique each other and other activists, other people who seem to care about the same things that we care about, if we're not able to critique that in a feminist way, the only people critiquing women are going to be misogynists. And that doesn't mean that the world will be better because women will be critiqued less. It means women will be being critiqued in misogynist ways. It means women will be pushed out of conversations that they could and should be having amongst themselves and with each other, so that instead all of the conversation can just be men being misogynistic towards women. So while I understand why people, especially people who are fans of Swoop, are kind of critical of me making this video, and while I think that because my tone in some of the parts I've already recorded does get a little bit short at times, I likely won't be winning those people back over. But my intention here is not to cancel Swoop. Not only do I think I could not do that if I had that desire, I have like 1,200 followers at the time of recording, which is amazing, but it's, you know, not comparable to her 800,000 subscribers and the sometimes millions of views that she pulls in. But I also don't think she inherently needs to be canceled either. I just think she also doesn't need to be sort of the gold standard that a lot of other channels, knowingly or not, sort of hold themselves up against in the kind of self-serious commentary community. I also, you know, I intentionally try not to be self-serious, but I know I'm self-serious. I know I'm biased. I know everything that I'm saying is from my opinion, and it's things that I'm taking seriously. I promise the reason I want to talk about commentary YouTube is because I love it, because I love videos like this, and because I think they could be better. And because I think they could be better, but that they won't be better if this is the standard that is getting rewarded. Hopefully by the end of the video you will understand what I mean a bit more by that. I just want to be clear, you know, like, Swoop could be worse. I am not making this video because I think Swoop is the biggest and worst thing happening to discourse. I'm making this video because Swoop is a very large content creator, and when you make content, it's up to be criticized, especially when it is, again, very self-serious content. You also do not have to agree with me on my analysis here, on the fact that I posted this video. You're welcome to have differing takes, whether or not that means that you continue to watch my content or not. Like, genuinely, you are more than welcome to have other takes, other understandings of situations that I talk about. That is part of why I like to offer alternate viewpoints when I can. So you're definitely welcome to disagree with me kindly. This is not the same kind of situation as where I was comment blocking people for taking up for Drake Bell at the expense of his victims on my other videos, again, because I don't think Swoop is a bad person. Defenses of Swoop, people who are telling me that they don't think that I needed to make this video, that's fine as long as you're not being mean. I trust that if your concern about my video is that I'm about to be mean, you will not be meaner to me in my comment section than I am in my video towards Swoop. You know, that just kind of feels a worthwhile clarification because I'm always saying I moderate my comment section. I do that when it's specifically things that I think are harmful, not just when it's people who don't necessarily agree with me. And also, I don't think Swoop knows about me or probably will ever know about me. This video is not really for Swoop's benefit. I put in the description of my Alexa Nikolas videos, you know, that I wasn't asking for or anticipating a response from her. That's very much the same vibe here. Not only is this video not for Swoop, I don't think that the way that it's structured would be the easiest way for her to have criticisms of her channel presented to her. She never asked me for criticisms of her channel. This is instead an analysis that I have done that has informed the way that I make videos and think about commentary YouTube, and that I think is useful for other people, other viewers, other creators. I'm not trying to open a dialogue with Swoop, and that's not because I am sitting here being mad at her and making a hit piece. It's just because that is not the intention of my video. It's never the intention of my videos. Like, if you're not already familiar, you can take a look around my channel. I've made videos about people like Bethany Beal from Girl Defined and taken the stance of both defending and criticizing her. That also was not a video where I wanted a response from Bethany Beal, and I didn't get one. For some of that nuance that I'm front-loading here, you know, already it might come across as hypocritical to you that I, as a YouTuber, am about to criticize somebody who is a YouTuber and who makes money making videos when I also make money making videos, and videos that are about sensitive and serious subjects. So before we dive into any of this, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on why I personally feel like I'm kind of within my rights to criticize Swoop. My cat is moving the thing my camera is on. Are you good? Okay. Thank you, Joanne, for the cinematic moment. I don't feel like getting up to move it again. So I don't make this part of my branding, but I have mentioned it in videos because it comes up when I talk. You know, I am somebody who has lived through trauma. I have been traumatized. I also have spent many, many years in therapy. I have done a lot of DBT work. Anyway, I, as a person who has done those things and been in those spaces, you know, I can kind of tell when I feel like somebody is trying to court me based on the fact that I have done those things and been in those spaces, you know? And that's a feeling that I had with Alexa Nikolas and Eat Predators and the whole power to survivors, survivors united, we all will heal together because all we need is an apology kind of thing that she was doing, which I got into in my first video about her. And it's something I also sort of feel with Swoop as well. You know, it's kind of, I mean, there's one thing where when you're making a video where you're discussing sensitive things, you talk about it in a way that you know that your audience will appreciate the sensitivity of. And it's another thing where you specifically are talking about sensitive things because your audience, the demographic that you have in mind that you are marketing to, is people who are traumatized and have been in therapy, or who are traumatized and maybe haven't been in therapy yet and are going to have like an urge to use you as some sort of pseudo-therapy surrogate. And, you know, in addition to mentioning that I want to do full-time YouTube, as like explaining that I don't think necessarily making videos about heavy topics is something that you shouldn't be able to do on this platform, but also because that's another thing that kind of puts me in an adjacent category to Swoop, not in terms of size or scale or resources, but Swoop is also a chronically ill woman like me. I am full on, like, doctor's note, can't work, disabled. I don't feel a need to give a comprehensive background about it on my YouTube channel, but I do have a neurological disorder. I can't work. I can't have a job. I am disabled. This is something that I can do. Leaving my house reliably is not. Working from home on the schedule that is set by other people, as evidenced by the fact that I have been employment discriminated against, is not something that I'm currently able to do at my current level of function. And as a disabled 25-year-old who sometimes has a couple good enough days a week to open the curtains and let some sunlight into her room, I'm very used to people not believing me about being disabled or being in pain, and that is not something that I would ever extend to Swoop or to allow anybody to say about Swoop in my comment section. Swoop is chronically ill. She has spoken about that. I take her at her word for that. I don't discredit either her chronic illness or how hard her chronic illness can make the work that she does. But I also think that it isn't a worthwhile shield for the criticisms that I'm going to be bringing against her in this video, which are not personal, direct, human being criticisms. I do not know Swoop as a person. I am not criticizing Swoop the human being. I am simply kind of collecting things that people I have spoken to and people I have seen online have kind of had some concerns with about the platform, because that seems to have been really useful when it came to the Eat Predators movement, and I like to try to be useful when it comes to places where nuance are lacking, and criticizing women is hard. I talked about that again in the Alexa videos. If you've also thought, like, wow, I have a lot of weird feelings about Swoop, but I feel bad about criticizing her, like, yeah, me too. That's why I'm gonna be in a couple different outfits throughout this video. Like, it's gonna take me a little bit of time to lay all of this out. So again, Swoop makes her money by being a YouTube person. She calls herself a documentarian. She has a YouTube channel. Her YouTube channel is monetized, and she also has sponsorship reads, which tend to be like tucked right into the first minute or two of the documentaries. Right off the bat, while like I myself will be using judgment once my platform is at a point where I can attach sponsorship reads to videos, I don't think sponsorship reads are like inherently bad to put even on serious videos. You know, I do understand. I also just think, you know, I also understand why some people mention that when they criticize her. So I'm bringing it up, but I'm saying that I myself am neutral on that. If the sponsorship itself isn't like grossly unethical, like if she was tagging for gambling apps or something, I would be like, this is terrible. But just in terms of sponsorships for, you know, I don't even know what she's doing off the top of my head. I think she does sponsorships for perfume. I think she does the perfume one. I think that's fine. I think that it makes sense. I know that the actual ad revenue that people get from YouTube can like come and go, so you know, that particular part of it, okay, fine, kind of name of the game, nature of the beast with YouTube, okay. But the real issue with Swoop is less the ad reads and more kind of what I'm going to refer to as the monetization of trauma, maybe? Again, that's less perfume and meal kits and more selling merchandise that advertises yourself as traumatized or a fan of the traumatized. This is something I also gave Alexa Nikolas some grief for in my 8 Predators video with her t-shirts and what she referred to as artivism. You know, I think making bank on selling a t-shirt that says either, you know, I'm a safe person, or, you know, what I joked about in my thumbnail as being, I felt bad about child stars and all I got was this lousy t-shirt, you know, like it's interesting. It's an interesting way to decide to want to make money, I think. I don't think merch in general and YouTuber merch is always bad, but I do think, you know, when you're making money off of allowing somebody to advertise themselves as being a certain way and upholding a certain set of morals, that's interesting. And not something that I personally would want to participate in if I had, like, merch. But again, you know, I made this joke when people were saying that I was trying to profit off of whatever, you know. You can tell me that I'm doing the same thing as Alexa when I start selling Eat Drake Bell t-shirts, right? Like, I still don't see myself in the future tagging every single video that I make with a sponsorship ad, even if I did end up with that opportunity, even though I am very poor. Which, if you want more videos from me, I do have a Patreon. That's linked in the description below. Did I make that seem natural? Anyway, having a Patreon where you're offering extra videos or somewhere that people can go and offer you a couple of bucks, maybe like I do with the coffee, that does feel different to me than straight up selling a valid hoodie. We're gonna talk more about the merch in a later section of this video. So all of the front-loaded nuance out of the way here. Part 1, who is Swoop? Swoop, otherwise known online as Spanky Valentine, is a YouTube personality and self-proclaimed documentary filmmaker. I've already mentioned in my recent video regarding Quiet on Set being a continuation of what I see as irresponsible YouTube true crime. It does kind of annoy me when certain YouTubers use the word documentary to describe something that is just speculation or existing blind items, you know, no matter what the production quality is. That actually was a reference to Swoop more than to anybody else. I just wasn't quite ready to say like, oh, and Swoop, because I knew I was going to be making this video later. I don't think that the videos that Swoop makes are videos that I would qualify as documentaries. I would very much call them YouTube videos, and I would say that I think that the Swoop channel, even probably the second one, is maybe a step or two above Illuminati on the kind of content mill realm, and I do know that those are potentially very much fighting words for me to use about Swoop's content, but I do kind of have some content mill red flags that seem to be shared by other viewers, just in terms of kind of not just the wide scope of videos that she makes in terms of subject, but also the lack of depth on a lot of them. They don't seem to be particularly well researched, even though the fact that she constantly refers to having a team would make you think that they would be. However, like, actual filmmaking effort goes into that, and I don't want to minimize that. They are well edited videos, they're engaging, there is a reason that they get so many views. I just also don't think that they're documentaries, and I think that they are kind of intentionally repetitive and bloated in ways that we'll examine in a bit more detail later. So again, not like full outright content mill, but also not completely off of that path, in my opinion, in my personal, completely subjective sorting. You can definitely let me know what you think in the comment section. None of my questions are rhetorical. Like, even if you're commenting before you're finished watching the video, like, a lot of people like to just leave the timestamp and then say, like, if they agree or disagree. I love that. It's very fun. Again, my videos are intentionally conversational. I would love to know what you think. I personally came across Swoop first in the summer of 2023, so a few months before I would start making commentary video, but a few years into me consuming it. If you are already a watcher and enjoyer of commentary YouTube, you already know who Swoop is, and I don't need to take a bunch of time to fill you in on the Colleen Ballinger drama and its coverage, but I do need to talk about what I see as some ways that Swoop mishandled that. So to do that, for the sake of people who did not watch all of those videos, or who maybe have not in a while, I will be recapping certain parts of the Colleen Ballinger saga. Because Swoop covered it, and she did so over the course of several hours, and I watched every single one of them. Colleen Ballinger, better known as Miranda Sings, was a YouTube entertainer for several years, and she used to collab with the likes of Shane Dawson and JoJo Siwa and tour as her character Miranda. The whole joke of the character was basically, she's loud and rude and inappropriate and bad at singing. Isn't that funny? Colleen used to be very proud and open about the fact that the shows were for all ages, but not in the safe for the family humor way, but in the kids won't understand my raunchy sexual jokes, but the adults will think it's funny kind of way. She has never been as talented at balancing this as she has liked to fancy herself. That's not like an original observation from me. I have, again, watched many, many hours of commentary about Colleen Ballinger. I made you a playlist. It's in the description below. Long story short, though, Colleen Ballinger has never seemed to have a really clear grasp on where the line should be, whether on stage or off, on what's, funny and maybe a little bit raunchy, and what's like an actively inappropriate joke. Because whether she's on stage as Miranda or in private group chats with her fans, many of whom were minors, she just kind of seems not to have ever really had much tact with that or with anything. In 2020, one of the minors from these group chats spoke up. His name is Adam McIntyre, and he uploaded a video called Colleen Ballinger Stop Lying, where he laid out his entire history with Colleen, including the story of how she was keeping him on the line basically for multiple years with promises of being her social media intern that would never actually fabricate into reality, but did make him perform unpaid labor and come up with memes and posts for her to make on the Miranda account. One of which was a post where she would jokingly come out as a Meghan Trainor fan. Apparently people got very mad at Colleen for this. I think kind of important context, I'm laughing, but I do kind of I was gonna say I won't say that the joke isn't funny. I understand why people would have thought that joke coming from Colleen wasn't funny. Me, knowing the whole context, never having heard that joke other than when this sweet little gay boy was saying that it was a joke he came up with, I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. So while I do understand the backlash that Colleen got and think that Colleen probably should have seen it coming well enough to say, I don't think that's a great joke, I don't blame Adam for that joke.
And she said, "The thing is, I agree with them. Queerbaiting is not a joke. I'm super sad I've upset so many people. I'm telling you, girl, I'm super sensitive, like near tears." Again, trying to guilt me and make me feel really bad for something that she had already approved and found funny. I didn't even get a message from Colleen asking how I was. It was just guilt-tripping me that I had done all this to her, almost as if I had planned it or something. So obviously Colleen had been running her mouth about me since my last DM. Keep in mind, I was crying most days after this because I was so upset that I wasn't hearing anything from her. Now I know that, oh, that's where the time went. I was obviously being talked about in these group chats and information was being fed in.
Somehow at that point she did manage to avoid like a big grand scale cancellation again by turning her other fans against Adam in those other group chats, which were called things like Colleenie's Weenies, and the one that her best friend had was Corey's Clit. Like, it is not a good look for any of these people that these are group chats that they were in. And Colleen's infamous ukulele apology, you know, she tried to say,
"The only thing I've ever groomed is my 2 Persian cats. I'm not a groomer. I'm just a loser."
Again, another not original observation. You can be both. She's both.
So I initially filmed some other takes about it that are still in this video, but I realized that because I wasn't around last summer posting videos during this whole Colleen drama commentary circle, I didn't get to make a video about it then, obviously, and I likely will not make a video about it in the future, so I might as well just put my takes on the situation here. I think that the Colleen Ballinger situation is one where a lot of the wrong buzzwords got popularized in association with it, especially as we'll see and are about to unpack with one of the ex-fandom members named Johnny Silvestri and what he portrayed with his relationship with Colleen's former husband, Joshua David Evans. However, one of those buzzwords is grooming, which is still, I think, a very helpful and useful conversation to have, and probably especially as it pertains to online relationships with people who are much older than the people who they're speaking to, power differentials there, as well as the fact that, you know, probably a lot of these minors in these group chats were not well educated on stranger danger, internet safety theory to begin with, but even if they were, you know, what child who is told, like, oh, be careful, don't tell anybody who you really are, like, once the person who is at celebrity level, even if they are just YouTube notoriety, you know, that kind of overrides, oh, I don't want to talk to a stranger. That's part of what the issue is with these parasocial relationships and people who take advantage of it, you know? Like, my videos, again, I've called them intentionally conversational. I want them to feel like I'm hanging out with somebody. But if I then took advantage of the good favor that somebody has because on whatever subconscious level they think, like, oh, that's my friend Ophi, we hang out, I were to take advantage of that in a way where I'm now coming to these teenagers. I don't believe, based on my analytics, I have a large teenage audience. I'm certainly not intentionally looking for them. But if I were to then ask these teenagers for emotional support, asking them for ideas for my YouTube channel, you know, that is so entirely different when it's somebody who you met because you're making videos and putting out content that they have an idea of you based on, compared to when I'm talking to my friends who have known me for years before I started making videos about what I want to do next and what I might like to talk about. Not that, I mean, I accept requests from viewers, but it's just a very different conversation that I have whether or not I actually know somebody. And this Colleen Ballinger YouTube person and their fans group chat really muddies those lines. So again, I initially mentioned those group chats because they're relevant in setting up the story of Adam, who told his story, as I just used clips from, and I did abridge that just for time. Like, definitely you should go watch Adam's videos about this. Those are on my playlist below. Adam was much younger than Colleen. He was in a position where she had all of this influence because, you know, I mean, literally she's an influencer, but, you know, favor in terms of he had friend group that was entirely comprised of the fact that they all liked Miranda Colleen. So she was like this intensely powerful figure in this much younger person's life, and ultimately she just was not at all responsible with that or with the way that she interacted with him or with others. The Adam and the Meghan Trainor thing weren't the only things that popped up in 2020. I know there was also like clips of her being racist, doing like a caricature where the joke is that she's being racist. Like not making fun of a racist, but like the joke is a racist joke. She's just pretending to be a minority because she thinks that's funny. She apologized like vaguely for a lot of things in a way that made it look like she was going to be able to move on from this and from what Adam put forward in his video. And then 3 years later in 2023, his story got corroborated by another ex-member of the Colleen Ballinger fandom. I'm not gonna go into all of the specifics of how this all came back out and that the person who, like, canceled Colleen was also doing it in the kind of vengeance campaign that we see from Swoop towards Johnny later. It's just all a bunch of internet stuff, but somebody who was in the Colleen Ballinger fandom, but who is not now widely credibly looked upon as a source. Anyway, the whole Cody Rants thing is just so tangential to Swoop that I'm saying I'm not spending any time on it, and I just talked about it. But other than that, I'm not further unpacking it. At this point, with support of the larger fandom, or rather ex-fandom, more and more people had left the Colleen Ballinger fandom in the years between 2020 and 2023, probably as much a result of Adam coming forward with what he said, as well as people just naturally outgrowing Miranda. These are all very young people. A few other people also came forward to tell their stories, some of whom we will be mentioning in this video, and some of whom, much like the Cody Rants thing, like just for time, I appreciate how much of your day you're giving me to watch this, so I'm being respectful of that, even though we are going pretty deep on some of this stuff. However, I believe everybody who came forward, and I do have a playlist in the description below where you can find more detail about the individual victims. And again, though I will be criticizing Swoop, there is a lot of really good information about a lot of these victims compiled in her videos. So for the sake of completionism, I will not tell you not to watch the Swoop videos the way that I'll say I didn't even watch the Johnny Depp videos later. I think the Swoop videos are fine. Having watched them will definitely make the rest of my criticisms make more sense. So maybe do that if you haven't already, but you don't need to rewatch them if you have before. I mean, if you want to, you can. I'm not your dad, but like you won't need. It's from memory, it's not open book. Again, this video is with the assumption that you've most likely heard more of this Colleen Ballinger story before than the things that I'm putting forward in this video. The situation between Adam and Colleen was more complicated and more disturbing than I have gotten into in this video. For the sake of the conversation I want to have today, though, I do want to spend a bit more time talking about the relationship or parasocial fan-creator dynamic, however we will classify it in this video, between a very small-scale YouTube creator named Johnny Silvestri and Colleen Ballinger's ex-husband, Joshua David Evans. So I'm glossing over details of Adam's story, not because I think that they are less important or less disturbing, but just narratively, as you likely already know, the dynamic between Johnny and Joshua David Evans came a lot more into question, I would say, than the dynamic between Adam and Colleen did. So I have mostly front-loaded with the parts of Adam's story with Colleen that Johnny would then later relate to. Again, if you haven't already watched his videos on the matter, you should, especially because he was so young at the time. I feel bad for him. Speaking of boys on YouTube who I feel bad for, part 2. Who is Johnny Silvestri? So Johnny also had been a former member of the Colleen Ballinger fandom. He had left much more recently than Adam did, But following that whole Adam story getting credited by other people thing, he too came forward with his experiences in what he described as a toxic fandom, as well as stories from a tour that he went on when Colleen was touring as Miranda with her best friend Corey DeSoto. And he shared experiences relevant to that just the same way as I have slightly slid over the details of some of what Adam went through. I'm not mentioning because it's not important. I'm just not mentioning it because it doesn't later come up with relevancy to Swoop, right? So Johnny Silvestri entered the scene prior to Swoop's first video about Colleen coming out. And Swoop worked for a while on this Colleen video. It was one of those situations where she was working on the video as it develops. So from my understanding, it was like most of the way done by the time Colleen dropped the ukulele apology. So it got addressed in the first video, but not because the first video was rushed out. Again, I have criticisms. I'm not at all implying that this particular video was just like rushed through. It did take a lot of time. And part of the reason why it took a lot of time, again, as I said, she took time to make relationships with her sources and get interviews from them. One of those sources was Johnny Silvestri, who had previously been posting videos about his experience on that tour with Colleen and his relationship dynamic with Joshua David Evans during the time that Joshua had been married to Colleen and Johnny had been a fan of them both. I've shown you some pieces of Adam's initial video from 2020 about Colleen Ballinger, but I do want to also use some clips from the videos that Johnny Silvestri uploaded. So these videos were uploaded to Johnny Silvestri's YouTube channel, which doesn't seem to have ever amassed more than a few thousand subscribers, and does seem to be something that, though it doesn't currently reflect it in the old videos, based on his videos, it seems like YouTube is something that he was doing and really wanted to do for a really long time. He has not uploaded a video since Swoop's most recent video about him. We're gonna get to it. I'm gonna show you a little bit of what I mean about Johnny, like kind of explicitly identifying and aligning himself and his experiences with Adam. Again, keep in mind, Adam kind of was the most high-profile face on all of this, even while Johnny was publicizing his story with Josh.
What Adam has come about, or what Adam has spoken about in terms of what happened with his situation with Colleen, I think what hit me so hard is just realizing how many similarities I've had with her throughout our friendship, work experiences. These similarities in the situations are jarring, a bit uncomfortable with how similar a lot of the conversations went down between the victims and her.
The initial pitch of this video actually was that it, in its entirety, was going to be a Johnny Silvestri Nuance Corner video. I thought that might be a big ask, since a lot of people already have sat through 4 hours about Johnny Silvestri already, so instead I just snuck it into this one. I hope you don't feel too tricked. Johnny Silvestri is somebody who I feel very complicated about and who largely I just feel really bad for. I do acknowledge that he, I think, overstated some harm, and I do also think that the other victims of Colleen's and of these inappropriate relationships, specifically Oliver, who we have not yet mentioned but will be discussing shortly, I understand why they all are frustrated with him, and I don't mean to say that any of them have a reason not to have felt spoken over or over-identified with. To be honest, even as I was initially watching Johnny's videos last year, I was thinking, oh no, I think he's over-identifying with Adam a little bit here. Because there are some discrepancies between Johnny's story and Adam's story, you know, naturally, not only because they're two different people, but also because Colleen is the main figure in Adam's story, and though she does also figure in Johnny's story, Johnny was much more interested in taking down Colleen's ex-husband. I mean, this is obvious even just in the title of his videos. I'm also nuanced and complicated towards Joshua David Evans. We bring him to the nuance corner as well. In this context, though, you know, hearing everything we've just heard about what was going on with Adam and Colleen and that situation, and then seeing the ways that Johnny identifies and then extrapolates and kind of takes it to move over to what he's processing through, which really is a separate thing. However, even though Josh and Colleen were like literally divorced and not really affiliated with each other, Johnny in this video and in his discourse is also framing Josh and Colleen as one person. I get into this later as well. This wasn't really a canceled Joshua David Evans moment as well, because Joshua David Evans wasn't still creating content and putting things out on the platform. Like, speaking up against Colleen was relevant. She was in the middle of a Miranda Sings tour. This was kind of just some guy. I'm not downplaying the fact that he did have power and influence, and that much like what we saw between Adam and Colleen, you know, that favorite person YouTuber, especially once you have a relationship with them that feels very personal, you know, that does really hurt if that goes a wrong way, and I don't want to take that away.
This man, I literally felt like was an older brother to me. He just ghosted me. He went ghost. The next time I heard from him is 8 years later on Thursday. It says, "Hey Johnny, in the midst of what's happening, someone brought your tweets to my attention. I wanted to cut straight to the point and apologize. I won't ask you to keep anything private. You deserve closure and respect, which is something I don't think you ever received. I was naive and oblivious to what it may have all felt like to you. You were too young for me to have given you access. You clearly wanted a deeper connection, and then I ghosted you. I didn't know how to tell you that you shouldn't be waiting around after shows to say hey for a bit. It felt okay at first, but then became too much of a thing. For me, it felt innocent, but to you, you were too young to understand boundaries. That was absolutely my responsibility. Instead of being straight up with you, I just slowly slipped away. I ghosted you because I didn't know how to tell you it was getting excessive. I never would have done it if I fully understood how it would end up. Your heart mattered then, and instead, Jesus Christ, dude."
I will say, and this might come across as meaner than I, whatever. You've watched this far. I think you know I can be a little mean. I do think just kind of unequivocally that this is immature. However, I do have a level of sympathy for behaving in ways that are immature, up until they begin to cause harm to other people. And the argument could be made that, you know, this was harm to Joshua David Evans and to his reputation. I think I would make that argument given what I know now versus how I would have thought of Joshua David Evans if I only were to listen to Johnny Silvestri. But also, while I feel like Johnny trying to do a big cancellation campaign against Josh was misguided and came from just his place of deep, intense personal hurt, you are not entitled to like a positive character reference from every person who you ever had a relationship with, no matter how hard you were trying for that relationship to be a good thing, right? So essentially, Johnny's complaints on his channel, on other podcasts that he's been on, as I've already alluded to, was basically that just as Adam had been groomed, so too had he, though not so much by Colleen as by, again, that ex-husband, Joshua David Evans. One of the reasons for that, you know, much like the story of Adam being kept on the line for that social media intern position and having made posts on the official social media as Miranda, Johnny had been given access to a somewhat equivalent, though not in scale, Twitter account that Joshua David Evans had for his Miranda Sings-esque character, Sarah Nikolas. The framing of this gets a bit confused later. Josh did give Johnny the access. He did say, here you go nuts, you can tweet on the account. I don't think go nuts is an exact quote, but he said, like, you can have this account and post on this account. I'm not very interested in it anymore. And that was because there was already an active parody account of the character that was being run by Johnny. So Josh at the time thought that it was no big deal. Johnny already was running a parody account, so might as well just tweet from the original account. Unlike the situation with Adam and Colleen, where there was like promise of an eventual paid job, no financial benefit was ever offered to Johnny for tweeting this. It was just like, hey, you can tweet for me. Isn't that cool? Which, like, obviously, you know, that's not good. That's just like having somebody do work for you. And it was somebody who was a teenager and who probably would have been very excited by that prospect. So with that in mind, I do understand why Josh would later apologize and feel like regretful and remorseful for this. As he said in that apology that we heard Johnny reading earlier, he said he was too young to have given him access. I believe that in the context of that message, he meant both access to the Twitter account as well as like access to himself. And while I can see why Joshua David Evans didn't think that it was a big deal to give access to that Twitter account or to himself to this young fan, I also do understand why to Johnny that was a really big deal. Not just at the time of it happening, but then again after the fact, after Johnny had been kind of, I would say, stewing in a little bit of resentment about all of this over the years. Suddenly now there's this big conversation happening about all of this, and Adam's grooming and the job that was part of that is such a piece of conversation in what comes up about Adam and Colleen. So to me, I kind of feel like the importance of this happening got reinflated to Johnny as there was more and more validation over when it had happened in Adam's case. You know, kind of reinflating it back from how you might expect to think about that kind of thing when you're older, back to how important that would have felt as a teenager. When you're a teenager and somebody who you admire and respect is asking you to do you a favor, like, it doesn't really register to you sometimes normally that that's like labor that you're doing. You would be excited about having that job and like getting a chance to prove yourself. So this also has been mentioned when we discussed this on a recent community post, you know, like, again, there's nuance here. Is it as bad as Johnny was painting it in every case as far as his relationship with Joshua David Evans goes? No, I don't think so. Was it still bad? Yeah, I do think so. Bad is bad is a very broad word, and it is unfortunately extremely easy as human beings to have relationships where we damage each other. That doesn't negate the fact that damage is done. It doesn't negate the hurt that the other person causes, but like, it's easy to accidentally mess up when you're friends with somebody who's much younger than you and you don't have any knowledge of how to operate that, or like cultural language around parasocial dynamics had not yet evolved. I do have sympathy for the both of them. It seems like it was a messy dynamic at the time, and then the way that it later got unpacked on such a huge level, it was just messy, I think, the whole way through, and remained messy as we continue to unpack this. Alright, I'm finally ready. I would like to talk about the third video in the Colleen Ballinger series, so let's go ahead and move on to part 3, The Devil in Colleen Ballinger's Shadow. This is the part of the video where we're moving a bit further away from the Colleen stuff and a bit more into the Swoop focus that I started with. So we are still on the Colleen topic for a little while longer here, but I want to focus on Swoop's coverage and the aftermath of her coverage more so than the Colleen stuff itself, right? As we will circle back around to soon with that dropped interview thread with Ollie, some of these things are worth commenting on because we see things like them again later. Some of these things are worth commenting on because they had other effects in the discourse on YouTube last summer around the way that things get talked about or people who get elevated in certain conversations. If I went note for note on every little thing about this video, we would be here even more hours than we're already gonna be, and I don't think that's necessarily worth it. But again, I do think there's still plenty of things worth commenting on, so I'm rolling together the third video and the Josh interview because I don't still have enough left to say about Joshua David Evans to give him his own section, and because the third video would not have existed, I think, at all if Swoop and Joshua David Evans had not worked together ahead of it. If you've seen this video, you know exactly what I mean. Johnny had been portraying a much closer friendship in his telling of that parasocial dynamic that the two of them had. In a lot of ways, I don't blame Josh for telling Swoop his side of the story, for providing screenshots. I do blame Josh for some of the way that he spoke to Jesse and Lily from the Do We Know Them podcast when they had Johnny on the show. Jesse and Lily are victims of this ripple effect from the Johnny discourse and the Swoop of it all. We're gonna circle back to them. Again, though, the fact that he participated at all in this interview, I think natural, makes sense, and also the fact that Swoop wanted to speak to him. From my understanding, it wasn't until there were inconsistencies noticed in Johnny's story that Swoop reached out to Josh. Nobody else had, asked Josh for his side of the story, though, even when he did offer it. I don't think Swoop having Josh tell his side of the story is a bad thing, especially given how much time Johnny had already spent telling possibly exaggerated versions of that story, or stories that aren't completely backed up with transcripts of their text message history. However, I do also kind of have an issue with this expectation that Johnny should have had to give his entire text message history over to Swoop. Obviously, it does make him look worse that he had edited some of his messages out of his conversation with Josh. But also I wonder if when he was asked to provide those screenshots, he knew that it was in a let's show the whole world context, because that would also explain his motivation for wanting to kind of censor some of it out. Either way, the result is essentially that he is painted as a crazed, obsessed fan in the Swoop video. Like he's a mustache-twirling mastermind villain, like he's a liar, like he is the devil in Colleen Ballinger's shadow, if you will. I won't, but if you go with the clickbaity headline, he is.
As Johnny's story continued to be heard by more and more people, it kind of began to shift and change and exaggerate a tiny bit, perhaps. I struggle with how much of this I think is just kind of a human getting carried away with things kind of thing, and how much of it was intentional lying. At any rate, I don't feel like there is, despite a near 4 hours attempting to convince me otherwise from Swoop, evidence that Johnny was like this whole time some mustache-twirling villain. I think, again, I think he got carried away with it. I think he was getting very validated by a lot of sources about something he had been very deeply hurt about for a long time. And as a result of that and the attention that he was getting, it didn't end up being good for him or for what he was saying about Josh, which continued to get kind of worse and worse. So Johnny's story eventually would shift to outright identifying with calling Josh a groomer, which could have been as much, maybe he was being inconsistent, or maybe just the way that he talks about that to himself has changed. I don't think that it is outside of the realm of possibility that he would have been convinced in the middle of all of this, constantly escalating discourse, oh, maybe that was grooming, right? In the intervening years between Josh's divorce from Colleen and all that time he spent not being on YouTube, he had gotten sober. That, again, also feels like important information for why it may feel like I'm giving him a bit of a pass in saying that I do believe that he has grown up since his YouTube days. I just think, to me, a lot of the phrasing of the way that these were said, even though I have complaints about some of Josh's former behavior while he was a YouTube personality. I genuinely do believe from reading what this guy has said about how ashamed he feels of the way that he was seeking out attention and validation from children on YouTube. Like, I don't think that he's still at risk of doing that the way that I think COLLEEN probably is. Anyway, while he never said outright this is part of my 12 steps, he did say that he had gotten better, that he was 3 years sober now, and again, in a lot of the ways that he was taking accountability, you kind of can see that work that he did to get sober in the way he's trying to communicate with Johnny, which is why I think to a lot of people it kind of sucked to watch that careful apologetic communication just kind of get the door slammed in it on Johnny's videos and Twitter. That's just what I get from those repeated apologies from Josh to Johnny. And when we contrast those apologies to the ukulele song non-apology, it is a very stark difference, right? So I know that I've given, a lot of oxygen to this was an inappropriate dynamic. Johnny was a child, Joshua should have known better. But I also do want to give about as much oxygen to the fact that, as I'm saying all of that, Johnny now and Johnny a year ago is and was an adult. He wasn't at the time of his friendship with Joshua David Evans, but he is now an adult. He was an adult at the time of this entire campaign and all of his interviews with Swoop. Josh still is significantly older than him, yes, but not in a way where that still truly matters all of that much. And I think Johnny was old enough that you would hope in a perfect world where everybody behaved in a well-adjusted way that he wouldn't have acted the way that he did, even after receiving an apology. But he did. He got carried away. And those interviews with Swoop are one of the main places I believe that he did get carried away. So Swoop, like everybody else on the internet at the time, was very sympathetic towards Johnny at the beginning in those early videos. They're largely about Adam and Adam heavy. Adam is charming. Adam had an existing audience. But Johnny also features in them quite a bit, both from his stories touring with COLLEEN and his stories about his relationship with Josh, including one that he tells about how he came out as gay to Josh and was not pleased with Josh's response to it. I think in the discourse surrounding the two of them, that got speculated on in ways that I think is really unfair and that I don't want to contribute to in this video. And I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think that's something we need to talk about in my comment section either. We don't have any evidence that the relationship was ever romantic or sexual on either part, and if we are accepting that when Josh says it, I think we also should be able to accept that when Johnny says it, even though we know Johnny is gay, right? I'm not saying that there is no world where he did not on some level have a crush on Josh, but if he's telling us that that's not part of his motivation, I don't think that it's helpful to sit here and act like it was. I think that it borderlines on homophobic. There are some other things in discourse about Johnny that I think borderline on homophobic. The same way that I don't want to let people come into my comment section and say that Swoop is lying about being sick. I don't want to let people come into my comment section and say that Johnny was only hurt because he had a crush and he got rejected. I think that is minimizing and unfair. I also think, so much of what went down between Josh and Johnny was just that, between Josh and Johnny. But all of it became kind of a matter of public record and public speculation, in part due to how long these Swoop interviews were. I promised I was going to talk about how Swoop got herself into some trouble with me from her interviews, and the length is part of that. Another part, I think, is because of how hard she worked to try to develop relationships with her sources to have these interviews, and also kind of already works to be a parasocial friend and support system to her audience. It kind of probably blurs the boundaries, I think, between sitting down and telling your new friend everything you remember and filming a deposition-length interview that later will be edited and presented with heavy commentary to make you look really bad. Like, it doesn't feel entirely fair to me. I guess, maybe when you sit down to interview with Swoop, you sign something that says that she can present you any way she wants. Maybe she doesn't care enough to ask you something like that. I'm not sure, but it doesn't. The thing is, Swoop's third video isn't even about Colleen. It's about Johnny. It's about Johnny because of all of those hours and hours of interview footage and like the chances that she had in those long interviews to try to kind of catch him out. At some point in gathering sources and reaching out to people, Swoop did something that nobody else who had platformed Johnny's story yet had done, and reached out to Josh directly. Of course, again, like I said, this wasn't until she had actually already played up like she was taking Johnny's side in the first few videos. Or, maybe she did truly actually take Johnny's side. But at some point in making her videos, Swoop got in contact with Colleen Ballinger's ex-husband, and he got added to the list of interview sources for the next video in the series. And that third video in the series, there's a few things about that one. Not just the whole bait and switch of an entirely misleading thumbnail, and the video itself being endlessly petty and I think kind of dishonest in its framing. We're going to talk more about that and more about what the third and fourth videos actually ended up being. But before we do, remember I said that there were like a lot of people interviewed in Swoop's first videos? Adam and Johnny, who we've already discussed, voice memos, TikTok clips, all that stuff from other people. Well, there also was somebody else who was meant to be a source in the Colleen Ballinger videos and who was kind of repeatedly teased as like this gets so much worse, we're still going to talk about this other thing, and then didn't actually end up getting circled back around to at any point. There could have been other behind-the-scenes reasons that we will get to later have been kind of posited by other people that this particular interview did not get circled back around to, but it's really hard when I'm analyzing this Swoop Colleen series as a whole not to just feel like at least 50% of the runtime of either the Johnny or the Josh videos could have just been completely cut and scrapped in order to use what she had apparently already filmed. This interview source is named Oliver, who was being groomed by Colleen's adult brother, Trent Ballinger. Ollie has screenshots, Twitter threads. He was on a couple of other YouTube channels, one of which being the H3 podcast, where he genuinely got talked over almost the entire time by Johnny. I did find like a breakdown of how long each person talked on one of the subreddits. I'll put it on screen. Again, this is why I'm saying people who are frustrated with Johnny have the right to be frustrated with Johnny when they are people who he actually was speaking over or kind of co-opting the experiences of. Another thing that he did do in the case of Oliver, when he apparently briefly said, "Oh yeah, I do feel like I was groomed by Trent Ballinger," and then kind of took it back. Ollie is the one person, as far as I'm aware, the one person involved with all of this that has like a story of like what we would really textbook consider grooming without getting a little bit tangential and esoteric about it, the way we do to apply that word to Miranda Sings and what she was doing with her comedy, or Colleen and what she was doing with Adam. Like, this was an adult person preying on a minor child in a way that did seem to have sexual, romantic nature attached to it. And for a while, it appeared that this would have been kind of a trump card laid out late in the stages of the Swoop documentary. Another piece of evidence coming out against Colleen, sort of, because it was Colleen's web fame that gave Trent access to these people to behave creepily towards. This feels like a complicated thing to really criticize. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I respect the fact that Swoop is a chronically ill person, and even if I didn't, I would still think that somebody with a YouTube channel isn't necessarily obligated to platform every single person they might be able to have an interview with. I mean, I was told while I was making my Alexa videos that I was like obligated to reach out to everybody involved to see what they might say about their side of things. And I was like, no, I'm doing publicly available information, and even if somebody reaches out to me, which somebody did, who I didn't feel like I wanted to necessarily start showing every single angle of something. I have that right because it's my channel. Swoop has that right with her channel, right? Of course, I don't have any say over what she should do. However, we as her audience are led to believe that she has an interview with Oliver that has been entirely recorded and that she just never ended up adding it into the finished videos. One of the reasons that was given for this at some point was that they weren't able to complete an investigation, which I don't think means that they couldn't have still shown the screenshots and had Oliver tell his story. I'm not sure what complete an investigation really means in that case. I don't know why completing the investigation was important only in Oliver's case and not in the case of platforming what Johnny was saying. You know, like it doesn't feel like it's because there wasn't an investigation completed. It feels like it was because there was a narrative that began to unfold. And that narrative, it was a narrative that began to really, really involve Swoop. Swoop was like the person on this. She was the one getting exclusive interviews. She was the one uploading 3-hour documentaries. She was the one people were tagging in new updates as they came out. I think she was very excited about having all of these exclusives. I don't know if this was the first time, with the exception of things she was like directly involved in from the beginning, that she had that kind of access, maybe. Either way, though, it did not end up ultimately serving the purpose that the videos began with, of shining a light on a situation, because the light had the opportunity to shine on Swoop, and therefore it absolutely needed to. She says she got involved in the investigation, and much like how she brags about these 4, 5, 6, 7-hour interviews that she does with people, she was saying that like that was a mark of her being a good investigator, that she became so involved in the story, when it's the opposite, right? I won't pretend like I am a super skilled interviewer of people. I can't imagine asking somebody for more than like an hour of their time in a dedicated chunk, let alone a 6-hour interview that I then later will scour, but then only play the same few clips of over and over again, even though there's allegedly 6 hours of it. The Johnny Silvestri YouTube video that Swoop uploaded is a hit piece. It's her being mad that she felt like she had been lied to, and her then changing her loyalties completely to the person who helped her expose the fact that she was being lied to by one of her sources, because it was easier to blame that source, I think, than to blame herself for not having properly vetted this before she got swept away in it. Because it's so much easier to frame it all as if Johnny Silvestri is some kind of mastermind than it is to maybe reckon with the fact that you didn't follow the best code of journalistic ethics. And that's because she's not. She's not a journalist. She's not a documentarian. She wants the clout as if she is holding herself by a rule of ethics that she doesn't care to consider before she takes any actions. I've got a lot of thoughts about this video about Johnny Silvestri. You know, most of them boil down to this was unfair. This was somebody with a much larger platform being a bit of a bully and over justifying it to her audience, to the extent that that whole audience that jumped into the bullying didn't really understand what they were jumping into. I said earlier, I think Swoop's videos are well edited. That's true, but also good editing is manipulation. I edit my videos to manipulate myself into looking like I lose my train of thought in the middle of my sentences a lot less often. A lot of people will use editing to make dramatic music swell underneath their somber moments and play with your emotions. It's editing, it's storytelling. Swoop is a storyteller. She's a storyteller, and the story that she told was essentially just, I'm really, really pissed off at Johnny Silvestri, and now, so are you.
Swoop left out Ollie's story. Swoop also held off on looking into the cancer fundraiser that Colleen does for her birthday every year to help sick children that apparently allegedly goes directly to her bank rather than directly to the hospital because it seems to be like a big tax write-off thing. She kept promising to talk about that in the later videos, and again, she got distracted. She got distracted by her vengeance campaign against Johnny Silvestri, who, in the large context of all of these other things, Colleen and her once enormous platform and now meteoric crash, her brother, who was creepy and preying on young children, potentially teenagers, people he was meeting because they were fans of his sister, who was intentionally trying to get fans who were children because those were the people who thought that kind of stupid joke was funny. The reason that Johnny was the largest interest here is because it was the interest that was most pertinent to Swoop. Any information presented about Johnny, no matter how it was initially presented to Swoop, whether Swoop was being lied to about that part or not, is all presented like a big gotcha moment from Swoop. Johnny came right out and said that he used to be in group chats with teenagers. Swoop's gonna act like that's her big spill expose, that he was lying about it. Johnny tried to talk to her about somebody that he felt should also be canceled, like Colleen. Actually, the narrative is that Johnny should be canceled because he used to be friends with this person that he's no longer friends with and is trying to speak negatively about once he has a chance to. Again, much the same way as I offered empathy for Joshua David Evans, and I am saying he's not still in group chats with fans, he's not still making YouTube videos where he's trying to encourage parasocial relationships with people. I didn't care. I didn't care no matter how hard Swoop tried to make me care. I didn't care that Johnny had been in these group chats because he was telling us about it and he was telling us that he believed that they were bad. But Swoop presents that information by putting an out-of-context clip of Johnny being like, oh no, Johnny's in group chats with minors. Yes, I was. But it's like the larger context of that is missing, and you were trusted with that interview clip in a context, in a friendly context. You don't always have to make everybody come out smelling like a rose, but you certainly don't get to just, like, do whatever you want and call it a documentary, that's for sure. Am I going crazy? Like, what other documentary does this? What other documentary segues from covering any of the actual important parts of what's going on that it kept leaving for later and instead makes a grudge hit piece about one of your sources? Again, I really like Adam. I don't fault Adam for participating in this. Why the hell did Swoop call Adam when he was on vacation in the middle of all of this and be like, hey, let's talk about my big expose that I'm about to do about Johnny, but I'm not going to tell the other people who host the other podcasts that he went on because I need to have a big scoop because this is all my big exclusive and my ticket to fame. But the thing is that it even wasn't. It even wasn't, because she very quickly moved on to the next thing. But while it looked like it was her ticket to fame, like it was all in, 10 toes on the Colleen Ballinger surfboard, like full steam ahead. This video about Johnny has more views than some of the videos that are just about Colleen. More views than the video that is just the interview with Josh, the ex-husband. Can you imagine? Like, just as some random person, and it's not even a video that's like made with any level of good faith in anything that you said. It's a video that has a million little jump cuts between every sentence to the point that nobody watching it can tell what you were actually saying, but a lot of them won't notice that they can't tell what you were actually saying because they're not watching it that closely. And on top of that, it is being published to an audience that has already been fed a steady diet of pseudoscience bullshit. I haven't even gotten to the Amber Heard thing yet. We haven't even talked about body language yet. All of these things that are like the bread and butter of the way that Swoop bloats out a video essay that just all coalesce into 4 hours of weird, uncomfortable, inappropriate hatred towards somebody who was once a source for her dumb YouTube video. For a YouTube video. Like, this is all about YouTube. This was supposed to be about uplifting the victims' voices and platforming people, but it became about clicks and views and Swoop's ego. And I think the entire channel, probably the whole time, has been about that. Swoop had so many eyes on her channel, and she could not maintain focus on the things that she said she was going to maintain focus on for 4 videos, which probably could have been a 2-part series if she had actually, like, kept her eyes on the road. But instead, she got played. She got over-involved with somebody who was over-exaggerating his harm. She felt personally affronted by that. She spends a lot of time going over various ways that she feels affronted, though it doesn't seem like she stopped in the middle of the 6-hour interview to say, hey, don't say that. Seems like she didn't say anything at the time, rewatched the video once she hated him, and changed the rules of that conversation so that he had broken them retroactively. This is a nightmare. Like, I don't think that Johnny didn't do anything wrong. I think he did plenty of things wrong, but I don't think that he deserved this. I don't think that this is proportionate. I feel like a pretty sizable percentage of us had to feel like this was weird, even if we weren't defensive of Johnny, right? Like, please tell me that me and my bestie weren't alone in this, because this is just a lot to imagine having to cope with as some normal guy. So let's talk about this Joshua David Evans interview. As I've already alluded, I think it should have been much shorter than it was, so I'm not going to unpack it terribly long here. Some parts of the Josh information and interview came out during the Johnny video by way of, it had to, because it was exposing the fact that Johnny had been misrepresenting their relationship. He's asked more questions about Johnny. He's asked some questions about his relationship with COLLEEN, the divorce, COLLEEN cheating on him. That's a story that gets a bunch of airtime. I guess I understand why, but it also doesn't feel like my business, and not in a way where it's like, well, the fact that she was like, sending the nudes of Trisha Paytas to Adam McIntyre while he was a minor, in a way that does kind of feel like everyone's business. Interpersonal divorce stuff didn't really feel like everyone's business. I know some people probably were like eating it up. Again, this came out, this was its whole own episode. We didn't circle back to the potential alleged charity scam, which is covered in Paige Christie's video, which is on my playlist and you should definitely watch. Didn't circle back to Ollie. I've got more to say about this Josh interview, but let me hop in bed a couple days ago first.
Yeah. I don't want this entire video to be me reading my comment section / Reddit to you. However, our Nuance Corner residents over here have really helped me to make this video. This is the first time, with the exception of running some notes past some very kind friends that I met who had been affiliated in early stages of Eat Predators before I published my last Alexa video. This is the first time that I sort of put out a call for people to contribute if they wanted to. I made a Google form, and I will put the link to that post in the description, even though that form will be closed by the time this video is live. And a lot of the information that I will be sharing is either from that post, the Google form, or from posts that were linked to me in that Google form or that I otherwise had found on Reddit. I am very grateful for the help and for, the trust that people have that I'm the person that they want to share their notes with for this kind of thing. That's really cool. Thank you. So this is a new section I think I'm going to bring in called Notes from the Nuance Corner, where I highlight things that were said, again, either in the forum or in my comment section, and this is the first one, while I'm still sort of on that Joshua David Evans topic. They said, I understand that the situation around Joshua David Evans is very delicate / difficult to approach, given how unfairly smeared and harassed he's been, and that he has apologized and tried to take accountability for his poor past behavior. That said, Swoop left many of the worst things he did back in the day out of her super long interview, and I find that to be an odd choice, given she framed the video as like, let me give you all the info and let you decide how you feel about him now.
They continued, I recently found out that he used to call his fan mail, quote, dirty panties, end quote, so that when his primarily underage female fans sent him fan mail, they'd say, like, I'm sending you dirty panties this weekend, or he'd be like, send dirty panties here when he was asking for fan mail, etc. My mouth fell open when I found that out. And in the aftermath of that interview, there were so many people being like, JDE doesn't need to apologize for anything, because the stuff she directly brought up was all relatively mild, or she'd gloss over the details or not show clips. I have a lot of sympathy for what JDE's been through, but something about that just left me feeling weird. People would likely forgive him anyway, since, quote, he apologized, end quote, and we're not allowed to side-eye men for having done really creepy stuff as long as they apologized afterwards, of course. But I just don't think that interview actually gave a full picture, and that's pretty nuts to me considering how long and repetitive it was. As you can likely already tell from how pretty much in lockstep with what I've been saying in this video, that message is, I completely agree, wholeheartedly. I am positive, just based on the limited amount that I know about the Miranda Sings character and the fandom around her at the time, there are probably all kinds of things hidden in the backlog that are like way worse than I even know about that did not come up in the Swoop interview. A lot of the things that did come up in the Swoop interview, I also think are bad. Again, I give a fair amount of grace to Joshua David Evans today. That grace doesn't extend all the way back to when he was doing those things. He doesn't seem to be asking for that grace to retroactively extend that far back. Although I will agree that I have seen people imply that it should, that he didn't do anything wrong, especially given the sort of intense narrative framing in part 3 of the COLLEEN series, where Johnny is framed as like an obsessive stalker, which is still just something that I struggle to find a fair reading of that situation. Like he was probably an over-enthusiastic fan, but there definitely were lots of measures that I think Josh could and knows that he should have put in place to kind of slow the progression of that relationship that he didn't. But we are finally almost finished talking about Colleen Ballinger. This same commenter had a really, really insightful note, I thought, about something that I already wanted to talk about and have previously mentioned in terms of Lily and Jesse from the Do We Know Them podcast being collateral damage of this Swoop expose. So let's get into that. That makes this part 4. Do We Know Them? Do We Know Them is a gossip drama podcast. I offended somebody one time when I referred to the Trisha Paytas podcast as a gossip podcast. I don't mean that it's bad. I just mean that's my estimation of what the podcast is, right? It's a gossip drama show. It's these two women named Jessie and Lily. They used to work for BuzzFeed. and they do internet commentary, celebrity commentary, stuff like that. I've watched a few episodes of Do We Know Them. I've certainly watched their Addressing Everything episode from after they had Johnny Silvestri on. But in general, they often cover topics that I'm interested in. I find them charming. I do think that, literally everybody that we're talking about today in regards to this COLLEEN thing, I could level some amount of criticism at, right? Everyone's human, everybody makes mistakes. I'm not saying I would not and have not and will never make mistakes in discourse, right? What I am saying is that even more so than I felt bad for Johnny Silvestri, I felt really bad for the women from the Do We Know Them podcast during all of this. I mentioned this already. Swoop did not reach out to Jessie and Lily and give them a heads up about her content that was about to drop about Johnny Silvestri being a liar, being the devil in Colleen Ballinger's shadow. She does give lip service in the documentary to he tricked all of us. He tricked me, Swoop. He tricked Jessie and Lily from Do We Know Them. He tricked the H3 podcast. I have always felt like I would assume that there would be a level of professional courtesy that definitely did not seem to exist with the dropping of this documentary. So let me read you this next note from that same Nuance Corner resident, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this Jessie and Lily thing. This one says, "It really rubs me the wrong way that Swoop didn't let Jessie and Lily know the video was dropping or speak to them at all about their experience interviewing him. Even if she had given them 1 day's notice, they could have prepped a statement and been ready. Instead, they got hit with a huge wave of hate that they had to watch a 4-hour video to understand and respond to, while Jessie was literally on vacation with her family in a cabin without reception. I don't believe, as Swoop's fans claimed, that she, quote, couldn't tell them in case they tipped off Johnny and then he could hide evidence, end quote. What could he even do? She'd cataloged everything. I think she wanted her big mic drop moment and all the engagement and accolades that come with breaking the story, which is fine for her to want. She did a lot of work, but she opened up a sexual assault survivor who was literally harassed off a platform by people who believed her rapist instead of her to massive harassment and dogpiling, all for believing a survivor. People were trying to force Jessie and Lily to say that believe survivors isn't the correct approach, and I just thought that whole thing was sick. I think if she'd given them a heads up as a professional courtesy and asked them not to speak about it publicly until the video came out, they almost certainly would have. I really agree with this analysis, both that I think that they deserved a heads up, that I think that the fact that they were harassed when all they had done was bring somebody on and platform them, when to the best of their understanding he was a victim, and when, with the context of these women, what they've shared, I don't think that they did anything wrong with the information that was publicly available. I think they learned a lesson about maybe vetting sources a little bit better. But again, Johnny Silvestri did have evidence that he had an inappropriate relationship. And again, you don't always get a positive character witness from everybody, right? And I do remember Jessie and Lily getting a lot of criticism for having Johnny on, for the way that they responded once it came out that Johnny was lying or exaggerating. Again, they didn't get any sort of heads up. They learned with the rest of the world when Swoop dropped that nearly 4-hour-long video. And as is mentioned in that comment, they weren't even around, which, that isn't Swoop's problem, but also it's a problem that could have been avoided if at any point in working in this video, Swoop had said, hey, I'm working on this video just so you know this is going to come out. And it's not as if Swoop didn't tell anybody. As I mentioned earlier, Adam McIntyre is featured in the expose. She reached out to Adam, talked to him about Johnny, even though Adam hadn't met Johnny in real life. Again, it isn't to discredit Adam, but Adam isn't more of an expert on what Johnny was having testimony about than Johnny is. And also, while there is some merit to fact checking, hey, my gut says this, what do you think? Feels less appropriate. Again, this is still a very young person, and this is a much older content creator. I think it's telling that it was Adam that got the heads up and Adam that got to be in the content and not somebody who, I don't know, maybe on some level she was worried about having her story scooped. And again, that's what I said that I had some frustrations with Joshua David Evans about. He was very upset that they had Johnny on and didn't let him offer sort of a rebuttal. He addressed them multiple times over Twitter, and then again after Swoop's video came out, and they had made a statement saying basically that they would address it once one of them was not on vacation without signal. And he was upset because his name wasn't mentioned and he wasn't directly apologized yet in that. Swoop's audience is very protective of her. They were very defensive of her of this decision. I don't think it was a very good decision. I think this commenter is very, very astute that it seems to be because she wanted to have the big scoop. She wanted to be the one to break this story. And I do agree with them that that is reasonable to some extent. Swoop did do a lot of legwork on this. But that's kind of part of why I think Swoop is so worth talking about. Swoop is like holding herself up in a lot of ways as elevated beyond other commentary content creators, not just by calling her work a documentary, calling these investigations, but also kind of, even though she didn't directly say in the video, hey, I'm smarter than these other people who got fooled, it's difficult for that not to be an undercurrent that comes across. I know I'm not just pulling that out of nowhere. I've seen other people have that come across on the subreddit as well. It just was not a great look. And again, if you're reaching out to Joshua David Evans to verify his story, and you're reaching out to Adam to have him feature in your story, a DM on Twitter, like, it would have been very easy, and it does feel like it would have kind of been a professional courtesy considering that Johnny had been a guest on that podcast. Like, I think it was very easy to predict that they would then get hate once it came out that Johnny had been lying, even though he didn't really say so many of his exaggerations on their podcast based on the episode I watched where they addressed everything. So they were facing a lot of hate from people who had a chance to watch the whole 4-hour video before they did and change their stance from having agreed with Jesse and Lily a few weeks prior when they didn't want to hear from Josh. And now, because Swoop heard from Josh and Josh has been redeemed in the eyes of the public, they had a big target painted on their backs. And Swoop affects not just like the perception of other commentary channels, but also what a lot of those other commentary channels are talking about. A lot of reaction channels, tea channels, a bunch of people who had been covering the COLLEEN thing shifted to covering Johnny instead. Again, Johnny, who is this small fish, who I think already got pretty adequately wrist slapped by this long vengeance video from Swoop, but then was like main character of the internet and essentially chased offline. I take issue with some things that Johnny did. I don't think that he needed to full-on post Trisha Paytas's nudes just because he, like, technically had evidence that it had been sent to him by COLLEEN. And I do, credit where it's due. Again, I have no issues with praising Swoop where I think that that's valid. I think it's great that Swoop was able to convince him to take those down. I think that's pretty excellent to model. I think there were just a lot of other places where Swoop decided that instead of modeling or ignoring, she could instead humiliate, maybe? So Swoop ends up impacting not just the perception of Johnny, who is then covered by all of these drama channels, but also of Jesse and Lily, who are, like, shit on by a lot of drama channels. Adam McIntyre, who they previously had been friends with, also was not a fan of their apology to Joshua David Evans. He responded to it. Again, he's a YouTube reactor. He's allowed to make whatever kind of content he would like. But, like, this is a relationship that wouldn't have had to sour that much if everyone had been given similar amounts of information. These are from the Do We Know Them podcast subreddit. Girlies, what's your honest opinion on Swoop? Personally, have no reason to dislike her, but I get an undefined off vibe. And lots of people had responded with things that I had kind of thought might have been relegated to my private Discord messages with my best friend while we watch YouTube together. People saying that the petty university stuff feels very juvenile for how serious she wants to come across in her videos. People criticizing the "it's not drama, it's dangerous" headline that she kind of tacks onto her videos, even though it still then immediately goes into like cartoony petty university intro and like a little dance. Petty university and the fact that other people found it as cringe as I did seems to be a running theme. Honestly, if I wasn't like synced up watching at the same time, my bestie and I count down at the same time and then press play. If I wasn't like synced up, I would just fast forward through those sections, and I don't even fast forward through like sponsor bits. Like I'm in when I'm in, but I hate the petty university parts, and I hate the little Microsoft Paint animations. I thought about like going all out on this video, putting like a little annoying drum beat at the very beginning when I was saying all the stuff. I didn't want to do that to you, and I didn't want to do it to me either. Again, like my videos, I'm not 100% grave serious all the time. Like I laugh, I make little jokes, and other people did point out, like she might put those in to break the tension, provide comedic relief, but that it doesn't always feel appropriate. And what I thought was a really good point here, it says, "I sometimes wonder how the family members of victims would feel about those editing choices if they were watching. Like, is this a serious topic or not?" Another thing that I saw again and again and again here in the Do We Know Them subreddit, and also in the other ones, as well as in my comment sections and my Google form, somebody here says they liked Swoop at first because her public image is very much about championing survivors, but that's not entirely what her videos do. A lot of them lean into petty lambasting the bad guy. Properly analyzing abuse issues requires more emotional intelligence than that. And I do think that if that were her goal, she would have handled that trial with an incredible amount of sensitivity and not just follow the misogynistic dogpile on Amber that was popular at the time. But Swoop tends to agree with what's popular and lean in hard. Over and over again, people say she lost me with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard coverage. Or her taking Johnny's side makes me not trust her judgment and question her research in other videos. With her being a survivor herself, I try to have grace, but she added to the harassment and worldwide shaming of another victim. It makes me nauseous to think about. Her Johnny Amber trial videos completely turned me off of her content. She lost all credibility in my eyes to even slightly imply that Amber Heard was anything but a survivor of horrific domestic abuse. Unfortunate, because I actually thought her COLLEEN videos were pretty thorough and well done. Can't stand her since the Amber Heard stuff. She's way too susceptible to pseudoscience like body language. I can't watch those videos. I tried. I began to grit my teeth, and I was like, I can't spend 7 hours of my life watching this. I watched enough to get the vibe. I think that her fandom of Johnny Depp is very obvious and blatant, and I think that the way that she spoke about Amber Heard is disgusting. I think she very clearly, gleefully jumped onto a hate bandwagon against a woman who has been found to be a victim of domestic abuse and who I genuinely believe did not do anything wrong in writing the article that Johnny Depp sued her for. The fact that that case was allowed to happen in Virginia at all was so that people who would not think critically about it, people who would just accept the narrative Johnny Depp was giving because he is a famous person, he's coming and doing this to his much less famous person, famous wife, in like Virginia, where he knows that he has a bunch of fans, where he knows that he's going to be beloved because he was the pirate guy, where he knows that he can come out looking like a rose, and she is running out of money because she already had to pay for legal defense in the other court case where he was already proven to be a wife beater. All of that was for the sake of public opinion around Johnny Depp, which was manufactured in part, we know now, it has been reported, in part with bot campaigns, with manipulating the online landscape, and in part with people who, again, did not think critically, who fell for that Darvo campaign and who gleefully re-perpetuated it to their audience for the paycheck that they were getting, not from Johnny Depp, not from whoever was orchestrating these bot campaigns, but from the analytics, from people who had been primed by those bot campaigns to understand that this was how they felt about Amber Heard. And Swoop really, really claims that she has a level of objectivity here that she just does not. I watched far enough to see her be like, she shit in the bed, people. I don't know what else to say. She shit in the bed. And again, like I said, I got too mad. I had to delete it. I couldn't do it. I could not make it work. I assume the 7-ish hours of coverage about the Depp v. Heard trial all not only have the obvious manipulation you can see from how she's responding in the thumbnails. It's in general, you know, again, glass houses. I have to make thumbnail faces sometimes, but like it's a lot of like, and it's like, it's, what does that mean? Why are you doing that about, like, I was gonna say, why are you doing that about a case of like sexual assault, but I remembered that Swoop didn't even tell her like reaction to that part of the testimony because she had lost interest by then because the pirate guy wasn't still talking. Again, multiple people in my comment section as well as the Google Doc forum, all of them are saying, you know, this was a deal breaker for them. The fact that Swoop did not seem to have any kind of grace for Amber Heard, that the fact that Johnny Depp was powerful and was able to convince her that he was the ultimate victim and that anything that he did had been justified, even if it did happen, but probably had been exaggerated. It is remarkable to me, and it's the kind of thing that I think is up there with the James Somerton plagiarism thing, where like, if you lose a section of your audience because of that, you deserved to. The same as Alexa. If people no longer stand with what you told them that standing with you was standing with, they deserve to know that because they deserve to know whether or not they still stand with you. You're not automatically entitled to be stood with just because you one time had good opinions. And again, I'm not going over everything that Swoop said about specifically the Depp v. Heard trial, but something that came up in the Reddit thread from the Do We Know Them podcast when they were talking about what they didn't like about that, a lot of people mentioned that Swoop was very into body language, which somebody I think very insightfully put, Swoop uses as evidence when it is at most insight. I was really happy to see this conversation. I hate body language analysis. Some people are neurodivergent. Some people are nervous. Some people are socialized in ways where they talk with their hands more than other people. You can't. If you are not actively in a room with somebody, you can't infer anything that is genuinely all that meaningful from their body language. You can have assumptions and vibes, but that's what you can have. You are not able to make more information. You cannot extrapolate based on, oh, she's looking away, she's not looking at the camera. You don't know whether or not that means anything. I think the only time that learning how to analyze body language matters is when you are like physically in a room with somebody and you need to know signals about whether or not you should try to hold their hand on a date or something. Like, it's not something that translates through the camera. And again, on body language and on trying to diagnose somebody through body language, or trying to say just based on watching something that somebody recorded when they were nervous, like, oh, this person is a narcissist, this person is a sociopath, you know. I do have another nuance corner note that I would love to share from a viewer. I'm really disappointed with her attitude towards people with cluster B personality disorders, narcissistic personality disorder in particular. As someone with borderline personality disorder, we already face so much stigma, and all she's doing is adding to it. She calls a lot of the abusers/shitty people she covers narcissists or sociopaths, which, by the way, is an outdated word for ASPD, when they don't even meet full criteria. Cluster B's, emphasis on NPD, are not inherently abusive. Anyone can be an abuser. From my remembering from those COLLEEN videos, she was saying, you know, like, I'm not diagnosing her, but like, you know, coming right up against it, you know. And I do just really very much agree with that. I also mentioned similarly when I was talking about how I was startled by Alexa's demonization of dissociative identity disorder, or DID. I do think that there is real cause for concern here in terms of just like, she could be more careful, and I understand why that concerns people, that she is not, considering the way that she is constantly elevating the way that she wants to be thought of as this like documentarian filmmaker expert, right? So yes, I completely agree. endorse, co-sign. Having particular personality disorders does not make you inherently abusive, the same way that being traumatized in childhood does not make you turn around and traumatize other people. You can and should seek help and ways to regulate yourself so that you can have a more pleasant life and experience, and so that you can connect with other people in ways that are more stable and healthy for both of you. But you are not inherently abusive if you have borderline personality disorder, bipolar personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, or anything. You're not. Personality disorders are for insurance diagnostic categories. They are not to associate whether or not you are a good or bad person, whether or not it's more likely that you did abusive things. Like, it's why I'm always careful about not saying that I think that Alexa is narcissistic, when what I mean is that she is self-centered, because even though those words mean the same thing, I don't want people to think that I mean that I think that she has narcissistic personality disorder, because I would not diagnose her or anybody, right? You get it. I'm gonna jump around a little bit from some things I've already mentioned to some things that have not yet come up. As is the case in all discourse, a lot of this kind of is circular. It all comes back into itself. And, I wouldn't find many of the things that I already commented on in this video necessarily to have been worth bringing up if they weren't repeated patterns of behavior. It's not just that Swoop participated in the grudge campaign against Amber Heard on behalf of her abusive ex-husband. Plenty of other channels also jumped into the Depp versus Heard coverage, and I'm not going to say that Swoop was the absolute worst about it, but I also am not going to boost anybody's ego here and say that she was any better about that than anybody else who covered it in a bad way was. Swoop's own personal experiences, trauma, what have you, none of that made her any more qualified to talk about this case, and she clearly did it in a way that resonated to a lot of people as being irresponsible and being something that kind of made them look critically at her other content. For me, if I had known before I started watching the COLLEEN videos that she had made that many hours of pro-Johnny Depp footage, I likely would not have watched the COLLEEN videos in the first place. It wasn't until at some point after the first one had come out and I was waiting on either the second or the third one that I looked far enough back into her catalog to be like, oh, that's why some of those things she said about COLLEEN felt like maybe she didn't have good takes about Amber Heard. A difference between the Swoop documentaries that we have and will be talking about in this video and the Depp versus Heard coverage, at least as of the one that I watched 10 minutes of, she was saying that those videos were different because she was investigating as she was making the videos. Again, this is all part of that language where I feel like she's trying to divest from being a YouTuber, even though she 100%, like a million trillion percent, is a YouTuber. I don't say that derisively. I'm a YouTuber. Lots of people who I very greatly admire the work of are YouTubers. But she can't just make a drama video hopping on a trending subject. It has to be justified as well. Typically, I spend weeks and weeks on these documentaries, but instead I'm going to make investigation videos where I'm telling you what I think as I'm coming across this information. Which is not a responsible way to share information when you have an audience. That's not news to anybody watching this. Like, you should take in information and see what you think, but to be like, well, my opinion is so important that I'd better live stream my exact facial expressions while Pirate Guy talks, especially when you don't have any qualifications, training, related education to be making statements on a trial. Like, it is just not helpful. It was not helpful then. They're not helpful as they're still up, other than probably in generating a massive amount of revenue and attention to Swoop's channel. One of the videos that I don't believe was an investigation video, it was a video made with the intention, apparently, of comparing Amber Heard to Casey Anthony. Amber Heard, who, like, even if you believe, like, she was on trial for defamation. She was not on trial for murder. And as you likely already know, if you've watched my previous video about Quiet on Set feeling to me as a continuation of irresponsible YouTube true crime, and that I'm not really a true crime person, pick a subject, pick a catchy true crime subject, pick a catchy YouTube subject. Swoop has a video about it already, or she will very shortly. This is sort of me proving the whole content mill point of it all earlier, but I need to talk about the Gypsy Rose Blanchard video, and I need to tell the person who wrote that note in the Nuance Corner forum for me, yeah, you're right. She is so irresponsible with the way that she talks about personality disorders. Holy shit. Like, before we get into anything that I already said about that video when I was recording about it earlier, this video, again, it's one of a million catchy topics. A lot of people on the internet hate Gypsy Rose Blanchard, and there are a lot of different videos with a lot of different topics, and probably so many that I haven't gotten to in this video. This Amber Heard stuff, this body language stuff, I don't think it's fair that I'm expected to disregard that and to disregard her irresponsibility about personality disorders, the irresponsibility of completely assigning a personality disorder to Nicholas Godejohn that his own legal team never even attempted because he was not diagnosed with. She's desperate for the angle, the same way she was desperate for the angle where Amber Heard was Casey Anthony because they're the two most hated women. That video later got deleted. The Gypsy Rose Blanchard video is still up, but it is very bad, like potentially one of the worst videos I've seen from Swoop, which feels like it's saying something. If you've never watched a Swoop video, thank you for hanging out with me for this long while I info dump about her. But if you've never watched a Swoop video before, they tend to begin with like a 1 or 2 minute, for lack of a better word, AMV about the subject of the documentary of the day. You can predict from watching these opening cinematics, pretty much not only what Swoop's opinion is and what arguments she's going to make, but also which arguments she isn't going to even consider the validity of. That's the case for all of them. It's the case for the one where she is horrifically dismissive of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, in favor of painting her as a manipulative mastermind rather than a victim of horrific child abuse. You can tell right from the opening video of that one exactly what her take is, but you can't tell how bad it is. I wasn't prepared for how bad it is. I was not prepared. Swoop then tends to lean into a dramatic second-person narration to transition from all of those clips that already set you in the mood with the music and the rapid scene changes and all of the out-of-context clips that get you riled up to be angry at the person she wants you angry at. She'll transition into a second-person story where it's like, imagine you're watching a YouTube video and somebody's telling you that it's a documentary. You're very excited. You send the message to your friend. You click on it together. Excited. Like, it's like that. It just kind of goes around again. It's always, it always seems to be a story that she also will tell later in the video. I said Swoop editing bloat earlier. That's what I mean. Does kind of make me wonder what the scripting process is. You know, maybe something's getting fed back into ChatGPT. I don't know. I didn't say that. Who said that? Usually at least one of the opening sequence clips will be folded into the structure of the video and repeatedly called back to, summarized and then shown, cut to. There is so much footage reusing. And when it's in the context of, you know, I mentioned I really hated the Gypsy Rose Blanchard one, and Side note here, I do understand that in any other context, the first part of Gypsy Rose's name is a slur. I would never use it in that context, but I don't think it's helpful to full-on rename somebody for the sake of discourse when they have a name, and her name is Gypsy Rose, so I refer to her as such. The clip of Gypsy Rose that Swoop really hated was one where she pointed out, I think correctly, that she was not the one who orchestrated the actual kill on Dee Dee Blanchard, her mother. Or another clip where she was saying on a podcast that her then husband or any other person that she had spoken to had said that if she had asked them to do that, they wouldn't have, but they would have helped her find another way out. And in Swoop's estimation, this was like some kind of evidence against Gypsy Rose, I guess. I don't understand how that's the case. My understanding, like my personal take on that case is that, I think there are a lot of people who she could have asked to do that for her who would not have done it for her. The man who did it was a murderer. He also sexually assaulted Gypsy Rose, and Swoop, for all of the self-aggrandizing that she did during her series about Colleen Ballinger, about how much she stands with and protects and validates victims, the way that Swoop told a story that is very widely known, like, if you know about the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case, you likely know that there are allegations that she was sexually assaulted immediately following the murder of her mother. The story given is that she was basically offered the choice that it would happen to her mother's body or to herself. This is horrific. A yes under these conditions, with these options, is not a yes. It is sexual assault. She was sexually assaulted. She was raped. Swoop introduces that information in her Gypsy Rose Blanchard video by saying first that they had sex, saying second that Gypsy Rose had then referred to it as R, because Swoop does spelling and stuff, even though it's a documentary. And third, that Nick discredited that. And then, and I checked the timestamp as I was watching because I kept waiting for her to come back to it and give that piece of information about why they had sex right after the murder. And she didn't for like a solid hour after introducing the concept that they had had maybe consensual sex. This wasn't a bait and switch where it was like the first half is like, oh no, what if we hate Gypsy Rose? And the second half is like, just kidding, she's a victim. Like, it was brought up again in a, well, can we really trust her though kind of way. It made me so angry that I couldn't even use the initial footage that I filmed about this because I was too mad. I don't think that you have any right to give yourself any kind of grasp for credibility if that is the way that you talk about an allegation like that. Nicholas Godejohn, there is no reason for us to believe that he has dissociative identity disorder, and Swoop attempts to make it pretty clear. I mean, she made it clear to me that this was an armchair diagnosis, and likely one that she pulled out of nowhere immediately after having watched Ryan Murphy's The Act and Investigation Discovery's Killer Couples, which she repeatedly cites as a source in her documentary about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. As in, she watched a Ryan Murphy dramatization that does seem at the time that it came out to have made articles come out about whether or not Nicholas Godejohn had dissociative identity disorder, and said at the time, no, he didn't. That wasn't brought up in court. And the clips that she uses from that shitty ID true crime thing, he's using language like devil on my shoulder, dark side I wanted to explore. If you know anything at all about how alters work and the kind of segmentation that happens with dissociative identity disorder, that's not what those things mean. He was using idioms. It would be impossible for even a mental health professional to diagnose Nicholas Godejohn with dissociative identity disorder just from watching shitty true crime and a Ryan Murphy show and scouring some Reddit forums where they're misogynistic about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. They wouldn't be able to do that. Swoop, again, she makes it clear this isn't a real diagnosis, but she then presents it as if it is. She says he was never actually diagnosed with this, and then continues to talk about it as if it impacts anything that she's sharing. And then she both polls her audience and reports their answers with the double-jointed question of, should Nicholas Godejohn's autism, which was diagnosed, have been part of court? Instead of asking two separate questions about the actual existing neurodivergency compared to the personality disorder that she just randomly decided to pop onto this guy, she asked if both of those things should have been mentioned in court, and then just told what her audience's opinion was of that. Like, her question was, valuable? I'm sorry, that's really mean, but, like, it's not a valuable question to say, I just came up with this, what do you guys think? This is a documentary, so it matters. Like I'm sorry, that's mean. The entire video seems to be, as the Johnny Depp videos seemed to be, an excuse in how to apologize for and provide cover for a man who did horrible things to a woman. And how to avoid acknowledging the very real repercussions that the trauma and mental illness that that woman who was being terrorized by the man Swoop really, really wants to ask you if you shouldn't just be a little bit nicer to, has been through. This isn't even the part that I say that I couldn't use because I got too mad. This really genuinely upsets me a lot. And if this were one or two stray bad takes, fine, whatever. But it's not. It's when there's an opportunity to jump on a woman, when there's an opportunity to valorize her abuser, when there's an opportunity to say that you are standing with victims as long as you can shit all over the one that you think is not perfect. This video is disgusting. I don't have to scroll very far to find videos on Swoop's page that I find disgusting. I think her videos about Gabby Petito also should not have come out before that investigation was even closed, and you can tell me I'm just misunderstanding and she's fine to talk about whatever she wants to. And that's true, I guess, if you're not claiming you're making documentaries. I didn't watch those actual videos because I find them to be ghoulish, but I did see the pinned comment. She updated the existing pinned comment that had her affiliate link in it and provided an update on Gabby's cause of death with her affiliate link for an intermittent fasting app attached. Again, I have nuance for ads. I have nuance for the fact that once you signed a contract and you said, okay, I'll put this on my pinned comment, you have to do that. First of all, first thing I do not have nuance for here. Do not fucking promote a dieting app on YouTube. Don't. The second you promote any kind of dieting app, and this sounds hyperbolic, and I don't actually mean it to be. I feel this way. I know this is dogmatic, this is very much a personal moral standard, but like, I'm taking you on this with me. This is how I feel. I wouldn't have recorded that part earlier where I said that I hadn't seen her take an unethical ad read if I knew that she was shilling an intermittent fasting app to her subscribers. To me, personally, subjectively, you might disagree with me, but I don't really care if you do. I think that is just as bad as a gambling app. Even if you personally, on a one-on-one for your own psychology and body, believe that dieting and intermittent fasting is good, you are so fucking irresponsible to ever try to shill that to your audience. You immediately lose any high ground that you might later want to have over people like Eugenia Cooney or any kind of thinspo influencers. You have to kind of assume anytime that you're talking about food or dieting or weight loss on a public platform where you are seen as somebody who knows what they're doing, as somebody who is inspirational, aspirational, so much of an advocate, and loves other victims so much, you need to have a thought in your head about, like, if somebody really severely afflicted with an eating disorder watches my video today, am I gonna make that worse? And the things that you do to do that are not tiptoeing around using the word fat like she did in her Biggest Loser video. It's not promoting a fucking intermittent fasting app. Oh my god. Oh my god. When she was pushed back on about this, she said that actually you intermittent fast every time you go to bed. So checkmate. I think it is a really intentional misunderstanding of what the original and very gentle pushback against her was. It makes me mad. And trust me, we will talk more later about ways that Swoop mischaracterizes gentle pushback of her. But before we do, let's just keep talking about the content a little bit. Earlier, I mentioned that something else came in and took away Swoop's attention after originally the Colleen Ballinger thing seemed like means to fame, right? The Colleen stuff, the Oliver coverage, the rest of the story as far as things were concerned with Trent, the alleged charity fraud, everything else that Swoop had promised to cover, all of that was quickly disregarded with a kind of... Initially, the explanation wasn't given, which is fine. As I said earlier, with her not needing to interview everybody who she has an opportunity to interview, not being obligated to platform every story, right? It's fine if she was burnt out after this Colleen Ballinger saga, especially when the third and fourth videos went so off the rail, and she continually said that it was because of Johnny. Because Johnny lied, she had to make those videos instead of the ones she wanted to make with the rest of her subjects in it. But, and again, kind of leaning towards my estimation of the Swoop channel as being sort of a content mill, it wasn't as if she took a break. She reappeared very shortly after her final video about Colleen Ballinger to talk about 8 Passengers, to cover a very high-profile case of an influencer being a child abuser. Actually, you know what? I should have put us in a new section after I finished talking about Do We Know Them, but I don't feel like going back in and changing it. This is part 5, Assorted Other Issues. So Swoop covered 8 Passengers much the same way that if you kind of take a look around, she covers a lot of hot and trending topics. I say that neutrally. I'm somebody who has made multiple videos about Quiet on Set. I have made videos about trending topics, but it wasn't an existing years-long interest or niche for her the way that it was for many people on YouTube because of the way that Ruby Franke, the mother of the 8 Passengers' children, documented her child abuse very publicly as she was doing it. Very similarly, actually, to how people who were on YouTube wanted to talk about Miranda Sings and her abuse of YouTube. This was like a more serious version of that same topic, but still like, hey, let's talk about what happens when a very influential YouTube person is being bad towards children. And Swoop, coming off from getting millions and millions of views on her Colleen Ballinger coverage, also saw a lot of success with her 8 Passengers videos, not just on YouTube, but also when she was on Good Morning America.
YouTube documentarian Swoop has been following what happened.
Meaning Swoop got to go be on the morning news about some really horrific child abuse that was perpetrated. And I'm not... This is another piece, you know, it's all nuanced here. I'm not mad at Swoop for saying yes, but I am baffled that she was asked. Swoop, to my understanding, based on what other people have said to me in Reddit threads, was not anywhere near among the first people to be talking about Ruby Franke. And a lot of those same people felt her later coverage of the 8 Passengers situation to be
very aggrandizing of the fact that she had gone on the news to talk about this situation.
If you haven't seen part 1 of my docuseries, I will have it linked below. It is absolutely wild, but what has happened over the last month is so much worse than I ever imagined. It's been all over the news worldwide. I mean, even in the last few weeks alone, I was interviewed on Good Morning America, appeared twice on Ashley Banfield's show on News Nation, all to speak about former YouTuber Ruby Franke.
I gave Johnny Silvestri the benefit of the doubt. I said, oh, he got excited, he got carried away with it. I can extend a bit of that to Swoop as well. You know, this is a professional opportunity. I don't think just necessarily for the morals of it she should have said no, but also, how is she an expert in that case? She doesn't know those people. She's never met them. She's never met those children. What she did was make hours-long videos where she used Microsoft Paint animation and had little running gags with her audience and did a little dance about how petty she is while she was talking about horrific child abuse that, like, very much will formulate the rest of their lives, because even if they weren't already traumatized by it, there is now extensive coverage of it so that any schmuck sitting in the middle of nowhere knows what these kids went through. Imagine growing up under the weight of that, and some influencer is really excited that she got to go on the news about that. Everybody that Swoop makes a video about is a real person, and I don't think that anybody who was still mad at me for making a video about Swoop when she's been going through things is still watching, but I'm not being that level of petty. I'm not doing a dance. I'm not making you watch my Microsoft Paint animations that look like South Park. I especially wouldn't do that while I'm talking about details of her trauma, which will not be in this video, but have been shared by her publicly in videos and community posts with her community in the past. Just like Johnny, the person that, you know, she, to the tune of 5 million views, said was the devil in Colleen Ballinger's shadow, I think Swoop got carried away with excitement and credit and validation that was not entirely earned. Swoop had been on YouTube for many, many, many years. That's not the part that's unearned. I don't think success on the platform of YouTube is unearned at this point. I think I've been pretty clear. I think her videos are good. I just don't think they are perfect or as moral or ethical as she would like you to believe. But if you convince people in the context of YouTube that you are making YouTube documentaries and you are launching your investigations for those YouTube documentaries, you know, they at least still have more context about who you are and the fact that you have made a documentary every few weeks for the last couple of years, maybe. If you're introduced to somebody on the news with no further context and they say, here's an expert on the case and they're a documentarian, you might think that they had more of a history with the case, but actually it's somebody who likely looked at a bunch of links that were compiled for them by somebody else who found them on Reddit and various forums. Inside of YouTube, you can click right over to somebody's channel and see, oh, okay, they've been an expert in everything that has been interesting for the last couple of years. And that kind of helps you to measure your expectation. But I feel like when you're introduced on the news, that kind of takes that away. And it presents her as if she is more of an authority on the trauma, again, of these children who she has never met than I think she actually is, or than I think that she should have gotten so much credit for. And then she was very excited about that validation, and then her future content about 8 Passengers suffered because, much like the Colleen Ballinger situation ended up being about Swoop, so did the 8 Passengers situation. I also was linked to a Reddit thread where it says that Swoop had publicly offered to interview and make a documentary about the ex-wife of body language snake oil grifter Observe. Observe is a guy I don't like, and he also jumped on the Johnny Silvestri bandwagon, making clickbait video like he does about every other topic, but this one was like, is Johnny Silvestri worse than Colleen Ballinger? And it's like, what are we even talking about at this point? What does anything mean? Nothing. What if it was made out of popcorn? Like, it's not a question that means anything. No, he's not worse than Colleen Ballinger. He is just some dude. You just find him annoying. Anyway, Swoop has previously praised Observe, and I have gotten the vibe the few times that I've been watching and seen her slide into some body language pseudoscience bullshit that it came from maybe watching Observe. I'm pretty sure she's praised him on her channel in the past. And allegedly, just like she dropped the thread with Oliver, she dropped this thread with Piper and Observe. Here's the thing though, again, and I keep saying this, and this is why I felt like this needed to be a video, because everything is so goddamn nuanced. I'm kind of glad she did. I'm not glad that Piper got ghosted. I think it would really fucking suck to have an ex-partner that has a larger platform than you, that is likely to be more believed, that has been making his money in a field that had a whole heyday during the Amber Heard defamation trial, you know? Like, she's probably extremely prepared no matter what her case is, and I do not know very much about it. I'm making no judgments here other than the fact that, like, this guy probably would be set up to use a bunch of body language pseudoscience to try to defend himself on an audience that is very primed to accept that, yeah? So I'm conflicted because the same way that Oliver seemed upset when Swoop repeatedly dropped his story, Piper seems to have been disappointed by this. And yet also, I'm kind of glad that Swoop didn't get involved with this. She did not need to be involved in the divorce proceedings of some internet strangers. Hopefully she realized that, and that's why she backed out, though she still should have just told Piper why that was. For the sake of how she did Johnny in that interview footage in the third Colleen video, it's probably for the best that she didn't go ahead and get a several-hour-long interview with Piper to sit on until Observe makes his case and has everybody on his side. You probably think that I sound like a really, really awful bitch for even implying such a thing, but think about the case of Amber Heard or Gypsy Rose Blanchard or any other woman that Swoop has presented misogynist talking points back at her audience because they are so fucking palatable. Swoop's allegiances seem to be incredibly, incredibly fickle. I think, as was pointed out in a Reddit comment, this is even pointed to in some of the branding that she has been using for her second channel, where she talks about the sus pool, as in John Boy, because she refuses to call Johnny Johnny now that she's mad at him. John Boy decided to take a big dip in the sus pool. Thanks for that, John Boy. While she's, like, purportedly doing videos about other things. The tagline is, everyone's a little bit sus, maybe even us, which is fucking weird if you're talking about murders and sexual assaults and trauma and grooming the way that Swoop over and over again is, and chooses to. She can make videos about anything she wants. That's another thing. Like, she didn't have to make videos about all of these people, and she has. She can make videos about whatever she wants. I do have some level of understanding. She is in a specific niche. She has been covering these heavy topics. She's afraid her audience won't stay with her if she doesn't. But, like, if it is draining, don't cover it. Don't make it your career. Talk about something else. Talk about media. Talk about books. Talk about something. You don't have to make your job be butterfly pinning down everybody else's trauma. In fact, you probably shouldn't have that be your job. And I really don't love the branding of the second channel while we're on the topic, you know, like, especially since that seems to be where she's intending on putting her more murdery true crime things, and she has, like, the tacky blood dripping font and, like, this AI skeleton in the background of a video that she posted speculating about Kate Middleton. And aside from the fact that AI bad, okie dokie YouTube video promise I won't use AI in the thumbnails of my videos, why? Why are you using a skeleton while you're talking about a woman who, at the time of her recording, like, nobody knew that she was, like, sick of cancer, but, like, was likely ill or hurt or missing? Why do you want to use skeletons?
Is the goth girlfriend aesthetic more important than being a fucking person? Is it really? But other than the fact that I did see her take what was going to be a lower effort second channel video and then turn it into a documentary by filming some extra framing and then being like, now this is a documentary, and I was like, piss on my leg and tell me it's raining, baby. So with the exception of that, I do think that these second channel things, if I were in any position to offer advice to Swoop, which I am not, this video is not advice to Swoop, I would say that that's more of what I think she should be doing compared to the very self-serious documentaries or, God forbid, future news appearances about child abuse cases she has no actual involvement with. And it took me a really long time to figure out whether or not I even felt like I could complain about her being on the news, because I thought it was fine when Jen from Fundy Fridays was in Shiny Happy People. I still maintain that I think that's fine. That might just be me being subjective and hypocritical, but my reasoning there is Paul and Morgan, who are also YouTube influencers, were in Shiny Happy People, so they're kind of the same level of involved in any of the Duggar goings-on as Fundy Fridays is, just one of them is Christian and one of them is not. Second of all, Fundy Fridays didn't contribute to the large-scale harassment of Amber Heard, and I'm not gonna lie to you, that does do a lot about my initial interpretations of a person. It just does. There is, like, a level to me where I cannot trust somebody, no matter, I don't even know what Jen Fundy Fridays personally, privately thinks about Johnny Depp. I just know she didn't contribute to fucking Amber Turd shit, so she can do what she wants. She was in a documentary that was very much about the niche that she has been in for many years, both as a content creator and as, like, a Reddit board consumer. I liked Shiny Happy People a lot, and I was not put off by Jen Fundy Fridays being in that. But do you agree with me that that's different from being presented as an expert in a situation on Good Morning America? Or am I just picking and choosing my favorites here? Because it could be either one. When I mentioned earlier, Swoop has been on YouTube for a very long time creating content. How long did you have in mind? I'm not doing a full, deep analysis of her entire internet history, though I did check out some early videos to get kind of a better grasp of what her content had been like before this semi-recent shift into documentary content. So prior to that, she did YouTube challenges, makeup stuff, buddied up with makeup influencers, and eventually with these like vague and sort of confusing complaints at having been shadow banned, she switched from her original Spanky Valentine YouTube channel to the current Swoop YouTube channel that she's currently on. She was making these super vague and hard to follow claims about how she had been screwed. She refused to use any more clear phrasing than screwed, claimed that she hadn't been told anything other than just, oh yeah, you got screwed by YouTube. Again, it is not easy to follow. These videos are shorter than any of the more recent Swoop videos that I've watched for this video, but they felt just as long, and they suffered about as much from Swoop editing bloat, where she uses the same shot over and over again, or cutting to just like extremely superfluous shots of herself walking down the street or like in a basement with a chair. It's odd. Some of that same footage is then reused in another one of those very long feeling 10-minute videos that is about the haters. And that one also feels strange to me. It's like quasi-motivational content, but it feels like it's like specifically for 11-year-old girls or something. Like 11-year-old girls who think they are more mature than they are, who are like formulating some kind of small business in their head. That's who that message to the haters video was for. It is just strange, though, in contrast to that very, again, self-serious content that we see now. Although, even within the serious content, and I'm realizing we're so far into this video and I haven't been showing you clips, I have felt as if using clips to prove my point would make this feel more like a call-out video, But there are some things that I just need you to see. So when I mention petty university, you know, I've said it's cringe. I don't think it works very well with how serious she wants to be, as that Reddit thread said. When I'm saying that she's doing a petty university segment, it looks like this.
Why don't you have a seat, Ruby? I'm sorry, y'all know, okay, petty is my coping mechanism, and I do not have a lot of patience for people like Ruby. So I will try to contain myself, but also that, Ruby. Ruby, listen, come here, Ruby. Bring it in. Okay, that's close enough. Ruby, I'm curious. Do you remember what I said to you in part 1 before any of this escalated to the nightmare that your actions have become? Do you remember? You were right? No, you don't remember? Okay, well, let me refresh your memory, Ruby. Bad, Ruby, no. Have several seats. Ruby, I have fresh, wet cement sitting in the back now. I'm gonna pave a bench. I'm gonna ask you to have a seat, and you're just gonna be permanently cemented down there for a while so you can think about what the doing.
There are some videos where she has made promises, such as in that Gabby Petito video that I earlier referred to that I think is ghoulish. She makes statements about donating proceeds of specific videos to charity. That's amazing. If it happens, I haven't found any easily accessible proof of that. If I'm wrong, I will put it in my pinned comment if somebody can give me a link to proof of her donations being made. And I'll show you in my source document the Reddit threads where I'm pulling that from, that nobody has found easily accessible receipts of those donations. I'm not saying she hasn't made those donations. I would really like to believe that she has. But at least as far as the Johnny Silvestri video that she wanted to donate the proceeds to Rain from, as far as I'm aware, nothing has ever been made public about that after the fact. And again, that video got millions of views and probably a lot of ad revenue. This is another thing that I feel so nuanced about that I almost don't want to talk about it, but for the sake of a more complete picture, off the bat, the same way that I'll never say anything about questioning validity of trauma or illness as far as Swoop goes, same goes as far as the long call-out documentary video that she made about her former friend GLAM and GORE Beauty being racist and microaggressive. Like, I got nothing on that one. I'm white. I know even the optics of me making a video where I'm criticizing a woman of color are probably not awesome. I hope that I've been nuanced and balanced enough in this so far that you don't think that I'm just taking advantage of the fact that I'm a white woman. I know that that's an angle here, and I also know that that's an angle in her falling out with Mikey, GLAM and GORE Beauty, who, like, okay, again, racist, microaggressive. I agree with Swoop. I don't think Swoop is wrong to call that out. There are other things Mikey got called out for in that video about what a racist and microaggressive person Mikey was based on these interpersonal interactions between her and Swoop over the course of their friendship. But, like, just the parts where she wasn't having the same kind of understanding of racial politics and dynamics that Swoop did, not just the parts where she stuck her foot in her mouth and said, oh, actually, I think it's harder for white people, because she's ignorant. I'm not arguing with Swoop at all that she's ignorant or that her actions would have negatively impacted the way that Swoop felt. I also think, though, that I inherently distrust somebody who will get mad at their friend and then show the entire internet screenshots of unrelated bad things that the friend did when they're things like talking shit in private. This is, I mean, in some circles, something of a hot take. I personally do not think that talking shit is a cardinal sin. I think it's fine. I think actually in private messages with your friends is the ideal place to talk shit, especially about, you know, other influencers who are sort of coworkers who you don't want to vent about on main. The same way that I, like, really didn't give a shit about a lot of the things I was asked to give a shit about Johnny, I don't give a shit that Mikey doesn't like James Charles but had a collab video filmed with him. I think talking shit in private is fine. I know and am fine with the fact that people talk shit about me in private. I would so much prefer for that to happen in private than to my face. Like, I think it's your God-given right. If you think I'm annoying, go tell someone you think I'm annoying. Whatever. If you're, like, saying that I'm saying something that I'm not saying, that's another thing that will frustrate me. If you're just saying, like, I don't like Ophi, cool, I don't care. Join the club. I've recently left it. Whatever. But this video and its response does seem to have been a real turning point in Swoop's content and sort of in pivoting towards that very serious documentary angle. They are in the description. You can watch them below and form your own conclusions, or also you can just ignore them because this happened in 2020. And again, I'm not defending Mikey. I think she came across ignorant. I think she came across like she was a bad friend. I think she came across microaggressive and not educated about race. I just also think it does feel like a dry run at the Johnny thing and at probably other things that, like, I'm not, like, teasing something, this isn't foreshadowing, but, like, probably things that we will see later, right? Hasn't happened again yet, to my knowledge, but, you know, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it did. And again, similar to Alexa behavior, you know? Again, another reason why talking about Alexa made it feel fair to talk about Swoop. Again, though, the takeaway here should be, I do not discredit Swoop's experience with racism, both as it pertains to her relationship with Mikey, or as it pertains to the trajectory of her YouTube career. I just also think that having a difficult trajectory doesn't mean you get to do whatever you want once you're at the top of that trajectory. Again, though, I will never, ever pretend like none of the criticism that Swoop receives is racist in intent. She is a woman of color. That is unfortunately something that she experiences. And also, I can see, being nuanced here, I can see how, as somebody who has had so much bad faith criticism against her, she might just kind of block out the actual good faith criticism as well after, like, having so much exposure to so many people only ever being assholes. But, like, commentary video in itself should be very communicative, and that seems to be lacking in Swoop's content, specifically in a way that harms her videos, the way she's coming across, and the reputation of other creators who she's not being in communication with. And, like, it's not as if everybody in the entire world is obligated to have that kind of heads up with the Jesse and Lily thing, or obligated to not have all of their dirty laundry aired out if you decide not to be friends with them anymore. But, like, when it's over and over again, when the favoritism feels so, like, able to happen at any moment and loyalties are able to shift, again, that everyone's sus, maybe even us, branding, it gets a little bit exhausting, I think. I think exhausting is the word I'm going to use here. Because I've been talking about Swoop and Colleen Ballinger and all of this for like a week now, and I'm still really struggling to even be able to bring these complaints and feel sure that people are going to actually understand where I'm coming from with this. Because, and I think intentionally as a result of some ways that she has been branding herself, at first as you can offer pity to me because of my channel, and then as you and I can offer mutual emotional support to each other about these hard things that I talk about in my videos, it kind of always has this through line where the purpose of the YouTube channel is that people feel a little bit sorry for Swoop. And that has nothing to do with her mentioning her disability or her trauma on it. I have many YouTubers who I am aware of or who I follow who are disabled people who talk about their disability or their trauma on their YouTube channel. But often that comes across more in like a daily life kind of way. If somebody has a channel about their disability, it's less a channel that covers a broad range of topics and then ties them all back into themselves, and more a channel that is just more about themselves and sometimes maybe ties themselves into a larger context. So many people who would never actually mean anything even remotely resembling the fact, like, that they think that Swoop plays the victim or whatever, if they say anything at all about the fact that she centers her own history of trauma or her own health issues or any kind of experiences like that, if that's mentioned, the really easy way to shut that down is to say, how could you ever accuse her of something so mean? And then everybody responds as if everybody said the mean thing that somebody responded to, rather than the thing that was actually said. That happens with Alexa Nikolas. How could you be mean? She went through trauma. She is a survivor, and she is, but she also can be mean to other people, and in a way that is unchecked because she is using that survivorhood to kind of elevate her position. Similarly, I think this built-in sympathy from being open about what you've been through, it is brave, but it also can be very self-serving, and I don't think that I shouldn't be allowed to say that. I mentioned my disability in a self-serving way at the beginning of this video. I told you so that you knew that I wasn't an able-bodied person coming here and saying this about somebody. And if I did that in every single video, or if I plugged onto every single thing that I made, like, hey, these are the top 10 bad things I went through, it just creates a dynamic where people are protective of you in a way that I think we know by now is a little bit irresponsible to foster. And that protectiveness over Swoop actually is brought up in the next note from the Nuance corner that I would like to share. This one says, "My biggest issue pertaining to Swoop was making her slam Johnny video in spite of the video coverage for the other people that were victimized by COLLEEN and her family members. I was especially upset because of Oliver's case in particular, which was very briefly covered elsewhere, and he never received a true platform to tell his story, which contained some of the most egregious behavior enacted out on a minor. Not only did Oliver deserve a platform to talk about his story, but implementing his story would have been so very paramount in starting a broader conversation about the dangers of online sexual groomers and the progression of heinous acts. Real-life examples are much easier to grapple with rather than vague, unrealistic scripts written to prompt such discussions." And even if it didn't contain Oliver's story, for Swoop to have all of that footage and say, oh well, I made this instead, and then when she received pushback, she opted for the, well, you guys don't understand, it's a lot to edit, blah blah, which her audience answered, okay, well wait. After going radio silent, she had others speak for her to say that the issue was traumatic, particularly because of her own history, which I can absolutely understand and respect, but on the same hand, you opened the can of beans, then filmed it, and then just refused to release it. Pretty crappy for those who were relying on her large platform to boost their stories. And if anyone were to bring the issue back up, it was as if we were not supportive of her being a survivor of child sexual grooming, which was absolutely not the case. I think I do agree with that framing of sort of, I said earlier, nobody makes Swoop make these videos other than my understanding of the fact that she may feel cornered by the algorithm. She did ultimately decide to cover COLLEEN knowing that that was a story of grooming. Ultimately, she did decide to start down that path and changed her opinion on how she was going to cover it based on her grudge against Johnny and to the detriment of Oliver and other stories that were going to be shared. It just really bothers me to frame arguments as if they're something that they're not. I saw on the same comment section where I mentioned that she had edited the pinned affiliate link comment, somebody had asked her, and I couldn't find their original post. I was going to put them both up like I did earlier. I couldn't find the original comment she was responding to, but apparently somebody had asked her how she lives with herself, making videos about this, at the time, ongoing missing persons investigation. And her responses were not only that she was planning on donating the money from the revenue from, again, an intermittent fasting app, which I think is irresponsible to promote to your fans, but also that it's really dangerous, actually, to tell somebody that you don't know how they live with themselves if they have struggled with suicidal ideation in the past. And that bothers me. I think that's a pretty clear bad faith reading. I think Again, I'm cool with people being mad at me for making this video, but I think hopefully everybody would be able to agree that a lot of times really genuine and constructive criticisms of Swoop, whether or not that's what you think this video is, are met with the worst possible faith reading. Most criticism of Swoop's content and the choices she makes about that content get redirected to the fact that she is a chronically ill, disabled woman, or to the trauma that she has endured and been open with multiple times to her audience. And also, I do think content is a more accurate word than documentary. And that content, fundamentally, by right of what it is and how quickly she makes it relative to when things are happening, it is content that is made on the backs of people who are suffering and who are going through hard times. People who have been through child abuse, or people who are being put through an enormous smear campaign at the behest of their abusive ex-husband. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, who I think everyone should just leave the hell alone forever. Amanda Bynes and Jeanette McCurdy, listed both with tragic downfall branding, the same tragic downfall branding that is used for Dan Schneider, who was, significantly responsible for a lot of damage that those two women faced, that now their trauma is being referred to as a downfall. And again, I made a community post because I wanted people to know and to be able to form their own opinions, and also because I knew that people likely would have expected that a recent community post made by Swoop would have made me trunk this video. And on a human level, like on a person-to-person level, my heart goes out to her very much. I feel very, very sympathetically towards her. I can see ways that I feel like making this kind of content might have trapped her into not feeling like she could take a break. And I really hope she takes a break. She didn't quite actually promise to take one if you read the statement closely. I hope she does. I hope she is able to, because I think that that would be good not just for her content, but also for her. The thing is, though, is Swoop is a real person, and so is everybody else who gets distilled down into a character name in the script that she reads for 3 hours. And those real people aren't often treated with actual nuance or empathy, or sometimes, in the case of Nicholas Godejohn, she will offer the empathy and nuance to, like, the complete wrong person and finish her video by being like, can you be okay with Gypsy Rose Blanchard if you don't also think that this man who sexually assaulted her and killed her mother is her knight in shining armor? And then it, like, tries to spoon feed you so much pride for feeling whatever Swoop decided empathy was that day. But it's not kind to the people who actually went through the tragedies that just get ground up and put into the milkshake of Swoop's content. So again, while I understand that there's some level of, oh, why is Ophi making a video about Swoop when Swoop is just a normal person, so are all of the people Swoop makes videos about. And I do feel pretty confident after how long I've been working on this video that Swoop isn't quite as careful with those. No matter how much technical skill I will admit goes into the videos, no matter how much I will admit that a Swoop video looks nicer and fancier than mine, it just does not feel like careful content. It feels like content that wishes to be understood as careful, but it doesn't feel like careful content. It doesn't feel like responsible content. Again, I sincerely wish the best for Swoop as a person, as a human, as a woman, as somebody who has been through trauma. I just also think that I hope that the best includes a little bit less brushed out content matter about subjects that clearly are triggering and draining for her to focus on so long term. Home stretch. I've got 2 more Nuance Corner notes, and then we're going to wrap up here. With the information I currently have, I really don't think she's a bad person, and believe her platform, although it may not have always been used perfectly, has provided a safe space especially for trauma survivors, particularly for DV/SA victims. I can't totally blame her because I fell for the narrative of the Virginia trial of JD versus AH2, and information regarding Amber's actual case was very hard to come by amongst a sea of false narratives, misconceptions, deceptively edited quotes, etc. But Swoop and a variety of other trusted creators really dropped the ball on the JD versus AH stuff. Watching the video you recommended about AH's actual case against JD blew my mind. It feels like a lie can travel the world 3 times before the truth can get out type scenario. Not knowing that quote about tell the world that you, a man, are a victim of domestic abuse being edited, and the optics of the trial seemed pretty damning at the time, but I had no idea about the essay that AH literally broke down sobbing over. Saw zero coverage of that. I don't think Swoop covered that, and if that's the case, that's extremely concerning to me about her credibility / fairness as a public figure for representing survivors, and could change my opinion. The video they mentioned me suggesting is one that I posted on my community tab a few weeks ago. It's called Amber Heard is an Unambiguous Victim, and it's the beginning of a series by a creator named Medusinique, and oh man, it's so good. It's such a good series. It's another reason why I didn't feel like I needed to go super in depth with all of the Swoop, Amber Heard, Johnny Depp coverage. It's fantastic. It really methodically goes by point on all of the misinformation that surrounded that case. It's fantastic. I can't recommend it highly enough. She did put a content warning for the sound of her voice, and I was like, this is like the normalest, most sweet sounding lady I've ever heard. Which, like, I don't know. I thought that was funny. If you're watching this, I don't think your voice is annoying at all. I like listening to you talk. I love that video. If you're not Medusinique girl, and you haven't watched that video yet, you definitely should. You can find it in my description below. I also have another message from the Nuance Corner. This one is from a viewer named Marty and came via my Google form as well. As a survivor myself, I find it devastating to consider that someone who paints themselves as an advocate for people like me is comfortable handling victim stories with such insensitivity. I understand we live in a capitalist hellscape, but even then I couldn't imagine dedicating minutes of a video about child exploitation, DV, essay, etc. to long-winded ad reads or shilling my merch. For that matter, it's difficult to watch someone who seems to find it acceptable to switch between allegedly sympathizing with these victims' experiences to the running gag of referencing Petty University. The mood whiplash is bonkers in her videos. I'd also love to know how often she actually donates herself to charities like RAIN and how much of her revenue is outright pocketed. There's no such thing as a perfect victim, and I'd argue there's no such thing as perfect advocates as well. But if you stand on a platform which proclaims to be all about revealing truths and giving power to victims, then I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be better, Swoop. I completely agree. No perfect victim exists. No perfect advocate exists. I have seen mixed messaging about whether or not Swoop refers to herself as an advocate. I have been told that she does not. I have seen her, though, in her comment section on her video, use language that makes it look like that is how she advocates and identifies, which is on screen now and is my justification for saying that. No perfect victim exists. No perfect victim advocate exists. If they did, though, they wouldn't probably be selling a super expensive print-on-demand hoodie that says valid on it. No judgment from me if you bought that and you like it. I personally don't think it's very cute. I think it's kind of tacky. As I said a million years ago at the beginning of the video, I do have, like, just a little bit of confusion about wanting to be paid to advertise yourself as a specific way. But, you know, that's just, it's not, whatever. I think the reason the valid hoodies bother me so much is because it always is like a secondary ad plug after whatever the sponsor is. And when that's tacked onto, you know, discussing the salacious details of somebody's child abuse or trauma, or making an at-home documentary about Amanda Bynes right after she did not want to be in quiet on set, all of that. And, you know, I had a comment on one of my videos where somebody said they've seen a lot of documentaries, but never one where somebody keeps tearfully looking at the camera to tell them that they mattered. Yeah, there is, of course, value and benefit to making sure that people know that they are not alone and that they are seen. but also I can't help the part of me that feels like this validity activism, I guess I would call it, is just as useless as the apology activism we have discussed at such great lengths when it comes to Alexa Nikolas. An activism that begins and ends on feeling special about having been victimized by something. An activism that feels probably as cheap as those print-on-demand t-shirts Alexa Nikolas was selling. And just like with Alexa, you're not a bully for finding any of this strange or off-putting or concerning. Just like with Alexa, Swoop's good intentions don't override potential harm that has been caused by her actions or the way that she's decided to cover things in videos. And they also don't make her immune to being questioned when those questions are actually coming from a place of good faith and wanting to critique something in a way that would make something and the discourse surrounding something better. Again, neither does her history with trauma or her medical issues or disability. A lot of people leveraging concerns about Swoop are not doing it in ways where they are being bullies, where they are criticizing her for her illness or her trauma or coming at her in bad faith. I really like the Swoop Snarks subreddit. As you can probably tell, I've used lots of screenshots from it throughout. I highly recommend it. I think that it is well moderated. I like that subreddit. Very shortly after it started, though, more than one drama channel made a video being like, everybody needs to leave Swoop alone. Why is Swoop getting so much hate? When it was a snark subreddit with a couple hundred people. It wasn't bullying then, and it's not bullying now. And honestly, there is a lot more that I still could lay out. My friends here in the Nuance Corner have helped me so much with this video, but I don't want to. I could keep watching Swoop content. I could come back and tell you about her coverage of the Try Guys and how presumptuous that was, and I'm sure it was, but I don't want to watch it. I could get into the hypocrisy of her covering Illuminati, but I also don't feel like watching that video. And I could get into the fact that a bunch of comments with some pieces of information get taken down on the Swoop Snark subreddit, but I think I'd rather just direct you to that subreddit itself, because I think they're doing really good work over there. And I could go through other evolutions that the channel that she was on before this current channel has taken. Again, though, it just all doesn't feel very worthwhile at this point. I feel like what's more worthwhile is the analysis of the videos that she is currently making and putting out and has recently made and put out. Because though maybe there is something vaguely interesting about the old music career, my stance isn't that Swoop couldn't shift from what she was doing previously into responsible, thoughtful, documentary commentary content that needs to be hailed as the gold standard. My point is that she hasn't. I've got a video for you to watch in my second playlist, which is the one of other creators talking about Swoop, by Mika's Rhetoric. I love their videos based on my analytics. So do you guys. They made a video analyzing why Swoop was getting heat at the time that those other videos started coming out that were being be nicer to Swoop. This was around the time that most of what anybody was aware of was the fact that people were saying she should have covered the Oliver thing. Mika talks about that and also some other stuff. I think it's a great video. Again, I have it linked. I had not yet watched it when I recorded the part where I was also kind of making fun of the thumbnails. But yeah, I guess great minds on that one. Anyway, Mika mentions the production value on the Swoop videos. How because Swoop's videos look so fancy and expensive and nice, some people in the audience might take that more seriously than somebody who makes a video like I do or like Mika does. I'm going to be so embarrassed if it's Micah. It's the middle of the night and I've been working on this video for so long. But people who make videos where they are sitting in their room talking about a situation compared to people who have access to big fancy lights and cameras and stuff and holding their own in-person interviews with one of their sources because that's the course that they decided their COLLEEN Ballinger coverage would take, you know? And I do think that's fair. I do think that there are a lot of people who are going to assume just because it's flashier that somebody who has a whole bunch of B-roll is more insightful than somebody who's just talking to their phone, even when that may not be the case. I don't know. These Swoop videos, this docu-content, feels like it comes from a very similar cookie-cutter mold to what we just were criticizing when it comes to Illuminati and her content. Maybe not the greatest amount of in-depth research and a really surface-level look at a topic and jumping around at several different topics. I can't even do a James Somerton-style plagiarism check because there's not always even sources listed. But like, if you don't have access to a fancy camera or nice B-roll footage, or a friend with a Canva Pro subscription like I do, I just, you know, it feels worth saying you can still make commentary. You can still sit in your room and talk to your phone. I'm sitting in my room and talking to my phone right now. If you want to be part of commentary, if you want to be part of the conversation, you just can be, without needing to try to live up to these expectations that are only really being set by this one channel, but also, yes, kind of in the audience's mind, but that's not really Swoop's problem or her fault or something that she has to or is going to solve. But if you wish you could make videos, but you don't want to remake existing documentaries, many people don't want you to remake existing documentaries. They want to hear about the weird thing that you love, or like the local thing that the history of really compels you about, or they want to hear about what you think about the movie that you watch a million times. They want to know what you think once you've stopped to think about something. That's what commentary is, and the people who want that will find you. You found me. People whose videos I have watched and loved have found me. I got a comment from Savvy Writes Books the other day. Fundy Fridays, Jen Fundy Fridays commented on my Girl Defined video, like, Paige Christie bought me this beautiful microphone. These are all people whose videos I have watched and very greatly enjoyed. And I sit in my room and I talk to my phone and they found me. That's really, really cool from people who have done this so much longer and so much more successfully than I have. And something I honestly, I mean, no offense to everybody else I just mentioned, but something I honestly think is like even cooler, every day I get to hear from people who took what I was saying very seriously, who listened to what I was saying, thought about what they wanted to say, and wrote me sometimes entire paragraphs in response to what I said. That is so cool. That is amazing. That's the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Even if you don't want to make content, like engaging with people who are making the kind of content that you want to see, if that content is careful, thoughtful content, if that content is people who are just telling you what they think of things, like, we need to be encouraging that, and you all encourage that in me so much. I have felt like I've been missing you all week, even though I've been recording this video, because I've known how long this video was going to take me to put together. Like, please don't stop interacting with me, but also you have inspired me to interact more with creators who I watch, because I was not very great at commenting before I started putting things out and receiving comments. I'm still not really great at commenting, but I am trying to become better at it because, again, I'm inspired by how much it inspires me to receive a comment. And the thing about that is that it also makes me understand why so many channels end up getting kind of stuck in that whole, oh god, I niched down too hard and now I have to keep kind of cranking out these half-hearted projects that people are requesting from me because it's technically within the parameters of what I agreed to make videos about. But it's a trap. It's a content mill trap. There's money in it, maybe, validation in it, definitely, but there's not joy, I don't think. The ability to make people happy by phoning in ideas is not quite the same thing as having a genuine joy in your product. I don't think that I would be rocking any boats, even amongst Swoop fans, maybe, to say that I don't think that there is genuine joy in Swoop products. And, that would be out of place in true crime content in general. But there doesn't seem to be a real love of what's being talked about so much as, if there's a love of talking, maybe there's something else that could be being talked about, right? Even then, though, I do think, considering the whole Amber Heard and the Johnny of it all, you know, even videos about catchy current events could probably be done a little bit better than Swoop currently is doing them. I think they can be better, and I think they often are, but they won't be if we keep pretending like this is the gold standard in, like, education content when it's actually, Illuminati, but about trauma, perhaps. And everyone is so allowed to criticize Blair Illuminati, but when it comes to Swoop, that's incredibly discouraged. It got hot in here. I really hope you can't hear my air conditioning. Please do not be mean to Swoop, especially not on my account for my sake. I do not want that. I don't want anybody to bother her. And also, if you're looking to make YouTube content and you're looking for a channel to emulate, I would suggest that Swoop not be the one that you choose. I've got a playlist linked in my description with YouTube videos that I would classify as documentaries, since I have talked so much shit on Swoop calling her videos that in my video. There's also a playlist for you, as I mentioned with Mika's video on it, that has other creators talking about Swoop. If you're looking for content creators in similar spaces, I would suggest maybe Shanspeare or D'Angelo Wallace for current event commentary videos that go, like, very in-depth. And if you, like me, were looking for some lessons to learn out of this whole thing for your own potential use in the future as you make content, you know, I think the big lesson here is kind of not to over-involve yourself in a story just because you're presented with the opportunity to do that and you really, really want to. Again, I still think that's very human. I still understand why that happened with Swoop. I just also think we all got to see something play out between her and Johnny that we all now know that we wouldn't want to do. I also would suggest learning how to hold the competing truths that while you do not owe the public anything, sometimes with certain sources and promises that you make, when you break those promises that you made, those things that you did kind of owe to the person you were promising them to, that does maybe sometimes change the perspective of your audience on you and your ability and willingness to live up to your promises. When you break promises like that, it can change the way that your audience perceives you. And when you pick a side against a battered woman in a grand scale humiliation campaign, that absolutely also can and will change the way that your audience perceives you. To people who found you because you were just telling them that you validate their trauma and you think that they matter, that does feel like a broken promise. Swoop calls herself a documentary filmmaker. She aggrandizes the importance of her catchphrase, "It's not drama, it's dangerous." I will allow that she doesn't seem to call herself a journalist, though fans and critics of her alike both tend to reach for that word since it is pretty closely associated with documentary filmmaker. I think I've already laid out the case of why I don't believe that her work qualifies as something I would call a documentary, because I think it is YouTube channel content, and I think it is specifically content mill YouTube channel content, or at least something very adjacent to it. The mocking part in my voice, though, is only for the documentary part and not for the filmmaker part. She does make, like, short films and stuff. That's on YouTube. I'm not critiquing any of that or anything that she does outside of specifically this drama commentary space. My criticisms of Swoop are specifically how her videos play in that space. Also, one more thing from the Reddit, though, this funky frog bait thumbnail that was, like, completely copied. I mean, I know everybody talked about Sephora and children a couple months ago, but it seems a little egregious. For me, I find Swoop's judgment difficult to trust, and I find her content difficult to stomach. I really hope that in the future she can involve herself a bit less emotionally with the stories that she's telling, because this current structure just seems very unsustainable. And involving herself less would also lead to less things with fallout, like we saw with the whole Johnny thing. I still think at the end of the day here, at the end of the 7 days I've been filming this, I think I still have been kinder to Swoop than Swoop was to Johnny in that Devil in Colleen Ballinger's Shadow video. I mean, you know, drawing straws on that one. She said Johnny Silvestri is like Ghislaine Maxwell, and I only really just glossed over the fact that there's more information to be found on the subreddit. But what did you think? What do you think? What have you thought of Swoop? What did you think of the video? Did you watch this much of the video? I think it's my longest one yet, so thank you so much if you did. I already mentioned this. I've known I wanted to make this video since I was working on the Alexa Nikolas video. It just took me a while to get all of my thoughts together. Again, I really, really appreciate everybody who helped me, everybody who came to watch when I posted it, who liked my post about it when I said I was still going to make it. I love you guys. I love making videos for you guys. I love commentary YouTube. I don't love Swoop's videos, and now I don't have to ever watch another one again, which is great. That feels nice. Again, I don't think that Swoop should be deplatformed. I don't think she even needs to stop making videos. I just would love to see her be more careful about it, both for her own sake, for the sake of her audience, and for the sake of her subject matter. If you're interested in hanging out with me more, I've got more videos on my channel. As I've said, I've made you some playlists in the description that you can check out with videos from other people. I also have just a general recommendation playlist. I have playlists where I sort my own videos into vibes. I really like organizing things. Thank you for watching. Again, I'm not mad at Swoop. Swoop, I hope you didn't watch this. If you did watch it, I think your content just could be better, and I believe in you that you could do that if you wanted to, but I also believe in you that if you want to do something else, your audience also will probably follow you to that. It's okay to want to do something else. I wouldn't want to talk about murder all the time. For everybody else, I will see you again real soon in the next one. Keep an eye on my community tab for future updates if you want to be involved in videos with nuance corner sections like this, and you can find my video suggestion form in the description below if you have something else you would like me to cover. This one was, as I said, already on my list, but I did also get a couple of requests for it between here and the Patreon, which was exciting. I have a feeling that, you know, I've already mentioned I think some people are not going to like this one, but I think the people who liked the Alexa video probably would like this one. I really hope you guys liked it. It was frustrating at times, but I enjoyed working on it the same way I enjoyed working on the Alexa one. I like thinking about how to talk about these things. Okay, thank you so much for talking about it with me. I love you. Bye.